Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
That was yesterday's mastermind meeting.
Awesome.
Last night's dinner at the Dunes Club.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
We love the Dunes Club.
So anyway, welcome to day 2 of the mastermind meeting. Man, yesterday was fantastic for me as well. And I just can't tell you how excited I am to have as our keynote speaker this morning, Ian Mathews. And I know what I'm getting ready to say you all can relate to, because all of us every once in a while come across and meet somebody for the very first time, and when you meet them, immediately you click. You know what I'm talking about? Yes?
Yes.
Immediate synergy, and I mean, it's not like you have to work at the rhythm of speech. I mean, it just flows. So just a few weeks ago, Carol Joy and I were out at San Diego for another mastermind meeting of real estate investors. And Ian was the keynote speaker. And I was so blessed the night before his keynote that he and I got to tag up a little bit and meet each other and visit for about 30 or 45 minutes. Just found a lot of things in common. And so as it turned out, y'all know my definition of coincidence, right? As it turned out, Ian and his family, his wife Jenny and their kids, decided to come here to Atlantic Beach, here in North Carolina, to vacation this week. And I invited Ian to come be our keynote speaker this morning, which he graciously accepted. And so just a couple of things about Ian, and I'm going to turn it over to him to run the meeting this morning. Ian, when he started out in his career, he went with GE for 6 years. He started out as a commissioned sales rep, and within 6 years, not too bad, he made it up to executive of the industrial sales for the company. Then he left GE and he went to work with NVR. If you haven't heard of NVR, NVR is the 4th largest national single-family builder of houses in the nation. And he went with them, and wow, he ran the entire mortgage department. Check this out, put your seatbelts on. 17 17,000 mortgages a year with NVR, $4 billion in revenue a year, and 750 employees that he was in charge of. So Ian's now been an executive with 2 Fortune 500 companies. He retired from NVR from this, but he's not retired. But he retired from NVR this past December, and we're just excited to have Ian Mathews with us today. Y'all put your hands together for Ian Mathews.
Thank you. Jay came over to me a few seconds and goes, "Did you put too many zeros on that? Was that $4 billion?" I said, "Yeah, I didn't get to keep much of that though." So it's a big company. It's funny. Jay has become, in a very short period of time, everything he said is true. But my kids thought we were coming on vacation, and here I am putting on button-down shirts and leaving to go see Jay here and there, and they wanted to know, who's this Jay Connor guy? And so we're Googling, and we find his little sizzle reel that you can find on his website, right? The little 3-minute video that he put together. And now my kids, I see them, my son, I'm getting ready to leave, and he's out there going, "Say it with me one time, the money comes first." I said, "Okay, you gotta say that to Jay." His man is gonna, they think you're a damn celebrity. I would not be surprised if I said Rolling Stones were opening for Jay Connor. This is real, there's so much drama in it. So I'm gonna try to get this thing up and figure out. So one thing, I want to kind of start with this. I don't have a PhD in psychology. I'm not a brain scientist. I don't have any of those things. I think one thing that Jay wanted me to talk to you about mindset, I think the one advantage I have in talking about it is having worked for big corporations. Over 20 years, I've had an opportunity to work with hundreds and hundreds of people and hundreds of very successful people. So I've worked for very good managers. I've worked for senior executives. I've had a chance to interact with CEOs and senior vice presidents, but more important, I've interacted with people just starting out careers that I've seen over a 10, 15-year period really have great success. And one thing I always get asked from a new employee, when I was managing, is what's the common thread? What's the secret sauce? What do you find common in the top earners out there. And I think they're usually looking for something they can go study or go practice on to get better. And they want me to say time management or intelligence and I never say that. I always say resilience. I always say resilience. And resilience to me really goes in line with mindset. And when I say resilience, I say it in line with the growth mindset, which is, can you overcome, one, are you willing to put yourself in a position to fail? Is your ego such that you aren't paralyzed by fear of failing so that others might think a little bit less of you? So are you willing to put yourself in there? And two, when it does happen, when you fail, do you look at it as an opportunity, right? Do you look at it as an opportunity to learn and I'm getting better? Do you get excited about failure? Does it charge you up? Because folks that do that, just regardless of their background, tend to do better than others that I've found in business. And so what I'd like to share with everyone today is what I've seen in top earners, top performers. And I certainly have not written the book on this, so I want to learn from all of you because you're in this room for a reason. You're all successful. You wouldn't be in a mastermind, you wouldn't be here if you weren't like-minded and you weren't trying to get better. So I like to learn in these. And I would ask that today, this is very interactive. I would ask that we are talking with each other and I'm not just presenting to you. I have some slides and I put them together kind of quickly because this all came together. I probably have 4 hours of material in here that we're going to squeeze into 2. So if I'm moving fast today, I apologize, but I do want to get as much interaction as we can as we go through it, okay? And I'm going to start with a story about Lionel Richie, which any good mindset conversation you've ever been to is going to have Lionel Richie in it, of course, right? Of course, you get it. Why would you not start with Lionel Richie, right? I'm going to talk about Lionel Richie to start off as I talk to you for a reason. Because a lot of you are probably thinking, I have a good mindset. I know all this stuff, right? I'm in this room for a reason. I've been successful because I have a great mindset. And I want to use Lionel Richie as an example. I love Lionel Richie. I grew up in Detroit. I grew up listening to Motown music. My grandmother and her 2 sisters were in a Motown band growing up. Music was a big part of my life. My mom was a big Lionel Richie fan. So if you look at my iPhone, you'll find 100 songs by Lionel Richie. And about 8.5 years ago, so I feel like I'm an expert on Lionel Richie. I'll just say that right now. So 8.5 years ago, I'm in a restaurant in DC, and Lionel Richie walks in. And there's 8 of us, we're sitting at a table, and he sits literally from me to you. And I freeze. So like all my friends know I love the guy, and they're like, go talk to him, go get his autograph, get a picture, talk to him. I couldn't do it. I was panicked. I was like, no, I'm not going over to bother him. I don't want to. But in my mind, I'm thinking, what if he's mean to me? What if, what if, like, all of my dreams of Lionel Richie goes terrible? I'd rather just and talk to him, right? Fixed mindset. I'm in the fixed mindset. Leave him just, as a deity right now in my head. And so I'm drinking more and more wine to try to get the courage to go over and talk to him. And finally, my wife gets irritated. She's 5 months pregnant, and she's like, well, I'm going over and getting a picture. You're wasting time, and he's going to leave. So she goes over and makes me take the picture. And so there's Lionel Richie, and my wife's on the left there, and 2 of our good friends, and I'm not in the picture with my hero. I'm taking the picture. I didn't have the guts to go get in a picture with Lionel Richie. That's a crappy BlackBerry camera. I didn't have the HD then. But that's not the worst part of the story. So after I take the picture, I finally walk over, shake his hand. He's hugging the girls, he's warmed up now. And I'm like, I'm just your biggest fan. I start talking, right? The wine's kicking in. And I'm telling him about the Commodores. And man, why did you leave the Commodores? I know why you read the Commodores. Because you were upset with the producer. And I'm like, trying to tell him more about his life. And he's really polite, just smiling. The drug dude from Detroit thinks he knows Lionel Richie. And I said, you know what one of your best songs is? Dancing on the Ceiling. And he kind of looked at me and smiled. He goes, really? That's the one you chose? And I was like, yeah, I love that song. Did that song win a Grammy? And he said, no, Ian, that was not up for a Grammy, Dancing on the Ceiling. And I said, well, what won that year? And he goes, We Are the World. And I go, We Are the World? That song sucked. And he looks at me and he goes, Ian, I wrote We Are the World. I shook his hand, I said, it was nice to meet you. Sat down and I was just crushed. much, and he was so polite about the whole thing. I tell that story because I thought I was a Lionel Richie expert, and I wanted him to know what an expert I was. Sometimes when you think you're an expert, you're really not even close to an expert. So I would ask all of you today to just take a beginner's mind, right? Take a beginner's mind. I promise I'll do the same with you. If you share with me, I'm hoping to learn as much from you today. I love this quote. This is a Zen quote. In the beginner's mind, there's many possibilities, but in the experts, there are few. So let's all be beginners today as we talk about this, because certainly no one in this room knows everything about the human brain there is to know, and that's a lot of what we'll be talking about. The agenda today, these are 7 things we're going to try to get through. I think we have till 11:30. Okay, so we're going to get through these, and I think we should be able to do that by 11:30. So here's the agenda, what we're going to talk about. So I lead with failure in this conversation. And I think it's important to lead with failure, because without failure we wouldn't be talking about mindset, right? If all there was in life was success, there'd be no need to talk about having mindset, because everyone would be happy, everyone would be succeeding. So we're going to talk about failure, how humans deal with failure, how we, and that is going to be a theme throughout all 7 points of the agenda, and how you personally can respond to failure. Self-handicapping, so I'm going to talk about, this is a concept in psychology, self-handicapping, of how our brains and as humans, things that we do to try to avoid a self-esteem hit from a failure, right? And how self-handicapping can get in the way of you getting to the goals and the dreams that you have for yourself. Growth versus fixed mindset, which will go right in line with the internal limelight, which hopefully, did everyone get that and read it last night, the article? Okay, great. Cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias. These are 2 more psychology terms, and I'm going to get it right down to plain English and simple, but there are 2 topics that can absolutely get in the way of your goals and reaching your goals. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is visualization and the importance of pairing that with making public commitments. And being in a mastermind, that shouldn't be new to you, because the whole point of being in a mastermind is to learn and commit and then come back and do things. So we're going to talk about that. And are there anyone in here like wine? Anyone here like to drink wine? So we've got wine drinkers. So if you're drinking a Chardonnay and you want to switch to a Cabernet, do you keep the same glass?
No.
Why?
Mess up the flavor.
Messes it all up, right? And so this is my last begging of you to take a beginner's mind today. Let's all start with a clean glass, right? Nothing in the glass, no preconceived notions. Let's all take a beginner's mind to thinking about a lot of this stuff today. I'm going to start, since we're starting with failure, about one of my earliest failures that had a very big impact on my career. I've had lots of failures in life, but my first real business failure. So I wanted to work for IBM in the worst way. My initials are IBM, Ian Barry Mathews. So for the time I was like 6, my dad would always be like, IBM, you're gonna work there one day. And in my head. When I was a freshman, a friend of mine who was a senior got a job with IBM. So that made it even more so that I wanted, because he told me how amazing the company was. This was the mid-90s. IBM was absolutely at its peak, right? And I read the CEO's book, Dancing with Elephants. I did so much to get myself ready for IBM. My friend told me what kind of internships IBM looked for, so I took very specific internships throughout that would impress IBM. I marketed myself to IBM. I aggressively went after that job. Went through 3 different rounds of interviews on campus. Took a psychological test, took an intelligence test. I mean, it was like getting into the CIA just to get the visit to campus, to Raleigh. That's where their headquarters was. They invited me. So there's the way the invitation worked is there was a happy hour, and you went the night before and you got to meet people that worked at IBM. You got to meet all the other people interviewing, and you got to meet the people who were interviewing you in this. So I was all excited. I'm dressed like this. I've got a sport jacket on and a button-down shirt, because I'm going to get off the flight and go right to this restaurant and go to the happy hour where I feel like I could make a big impact. And I leave early. I leave 3.5 hours before the flight. I'm in West Lafayette. I went to Purdue University, so it's about 45 minutes from Indianapolis. I got plenty of time. I borrowed a friend's car. I thought I'm in good shape. I made sure that it had enough gas in it before I left. What happened?
Flat tire.
Car broke down. It was an engine, right? Worse than flat tire. I could fix that. Engine, right? Smoke, everything. I'm stuck on the side of the road, and I got really close to the airport. Like I remembered, in my head, I kind of remembered the last sign that said 10 miles to the airport, and I had gotten a little past that. So here I am with a rollaway bag, right, and all of my notes. I'm dressed like this. It's a sunny day. I'm on I-65, and I'm hitchhiking for the first time in my life. I got my thumb out. In Detroit, you don't hitchhike. Your parents are like, don't hitchhike in Detroit. So I never tried it before. I figured Indiana I had better chances of survival. I found real quickly that people don't pick up hitchhikers anywhere, whether you're in Indiana or anywhere, because there are too many scary movies on it, I guess. So I'm walking for about a half hour with my thumb out, thinking someone might get me. No one, right? And I'm like, I got to do something different than my thumb out. This is 1998. There are no cell phones in my pocket. I can't call anyone. There's no cop coming by to get me. I'm panicking, and I'm dressed like this in the heat. I start running. I just start jogging. I'm jogging with my rollaway on the side of I-65, literally jogging, sweating with my thumb out. So I'm a big guy too, so I'm sweating. I'm not a great runner. And someone finally feels bad for me, maybe a mile from the airport, picks me up. I get there, I sprint to the counter, get my ticket, sprint to security, beg people if they'll let me go first, sprint to the gate, plane's leaving. Missed. I'm literally, if you can picture, I'm sweating, like all the way through my jacket, sweating. Mainly because I'm nervous, but I've also been running for 2 hours. And there's no app to go fix this. I have to go wait in line with anyone else who missed. There's no other flights to get into Raleigh, at zero chance. The only thing I can do is get in the morning. So I take that flight. I stay at the Indianapolis hotel that night. I get on the flight. I have 3 interviews in the morning, and I have a 4th at 1 o'clock. The 3 in the morning go really well. And they all ask me why I missed the night before, but they all seem to accept what I had to tell them of why I wasn't there. And I felt like I did really well in the interviews and got along with them. I have lunch, I meet with a bunch more people, it's 1 o'clock, and I'm meeting with the highest level person I'm gonna meet all day. He was a senior executive. I remember he had gray hair, had a $3,000 suit on, kind of came in, sat down. First thing he says is, "You missed last night." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Why'd you miss last night?" And I went into the whole sob story I just told you, right? Oh, my friend's car, it's a piece of crap, and you wouldn't believe people won't pick people up anymore, and I would have left a little earlier, but my class schedule, I kind of had to get to the last class, and man, security lines at the airport, I went through all of it. And he listened to all of it, and literally this is 3 minutes into this interview, the interview I wanted my whole life. He said, "You're not gonna get this job." Just blatantly says it right to my face, "You're not getting this job." I didn't know what to say, I just stared at him. He said, 19 kids made it last night. 1 missed. I know that about you. You missed something that was really important. You weren't there. They all found a way to get there, and they probably have bad cars and traffic and class schedules and everything else. And I gave you 1 chance to own it, and you didn't. You blamed your buddy's car, who was nice enough to give you a car. You blamed traffic, you blamed security, you blamed everything but Ian Mathews missing the night. All you had to say was, "I screwed up," and all the things you screwed up for. You're not getting a job. And he said, "Would you like to continue the interview as practice?" I said, "Okay." And I interviewed for an hour. He asked me questions, knowing I wasn't getting the job. And true to his word, 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail saying, "You're not getting the job with IBM." And at the time, that story was just the worst thing that ever happened in my life. I was crushed, I was destroyed. I had to tell my parents I didn't get the job and why I didn't get the job. I was honest with them about it. And I look back at it, and it's one of the greatest things that ever happened. Because I learned that day that it doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter why you didn't close a sale. It doesn't matter why your real estate deal didn't close. It doesn't matter why you didn't get the promotion. It doesn't matter why you didn't hit your number for a certain quarter or year. It doesn't matter. So you might as well just accept it all and figure out what you can control and what you can focus on. And so that was a failure in my life, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of failures that have taught me lessons. But that was a very deep one that taught me a lot about mindset that day, because I had the wrong mindset walking in there. It wasn't as important that I missed the night before. It was important that I didn't own it. That's what drove that executive crazy. He didn't want someone working for him that couldn't own their mistake. So all I had to do was say, "It's all on me," and I blew it. And so when you talk about failure, right? When you talk about failure and you see this word, I would like to ask the room, When you think failure, you see that word, you look at that slide. How are you feeling? What emotions does it bring out in you as a human? What are you thinking about when you think of the word failure?
Rejection.
Rejection,
Worry.
worry, anxiety. What
Challenge.
else?
I say
Depressed. Depression.
Depression, right? It's a very deep emotion around failure, right? You can get depressed by it. What else?
Embarrassment.
Embarrassment. Yeah, embarrassment. What else?
Disappointment.
Progress. I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that one. That's good. That's the right way to think about
Opportunity
it.
to change direction.
Opportunity. That's right.
Disappointment.
Disappointment. Yeah. Yeah, because there's no failure if there weren't expectations, right? With zero expectations, you can't fail, right? We're going to talk about expectations, but I think disappointment is a key because you built yourself up, you wanted something, and you didn't get it. And now you're either disappointed in yourself or just disappointed in general. You didn't get something you wanted, right? And so you can tend to get into that depressed mood, that emotional context. And I'm asking you about emotions because they're important when it comes to failure. Failure is an emotion and it drives your behaviors and even going after things that you want in life. And what I want to ask you, Jonathan and I were talking about young kids, right? His children are about the same age as mine, right? And specifically your 4-year-old. Right? Because 4 and 5-year-olds are an interesting game, right? Because they can talk and they're kind of humans, but they're really not human. Inhuman the way they deal with things. So, but think about your 4-year-old and think about how does your 4-year-old view failure? Or does your 4-year-old even view anything as failure?
Probably not, no.
When you say no to a 4-year-old, what do they hear?
They hear, well, I'm gonna ask again. I'm gonna ask again. I'm gonna ask again.
Oh yeah, I was telling Jay this the other day that old myth about how no one's born a salesperson, I think it's bullcrap. I think we're all born salespeople and we lose it at some point. I think everyone is born a salesperson, a great salesperson. You ever watch a 4-year-old try to get something when you say no, tell me we're not born salespeople. Tell me we are born salespeople, right? So when you think about this, why then do children learn? Does it not blow your mind to watch a 4 and a 5-year-old how fast they pick things up? Why can a 4-year-old learn 8 languages? Think about that. Think about people that know languages. They'll tell you I learned them early, right? Not adults saying they know lots of languages. So why are young children uniquely situated to learn?
They have no
Because they're
barriers.
an empty
No
glass.
They're an empty
They're a
glass.
sponge.
No preconceived notions.
No preconceived notions? What else?
No doubt kind of goes off the same thing. Like they haven't experienced the mindset of doubt when they're pursuing something.
That's right, they don't doubt themselves. A 4-year-old believes they can do anything, right? If you tell a 4-year-old who hasn't tried it to go flip a car over, they'll go get under the car and they'll start it. And then I guess I can't do that, right? But they don't know what they can't do, right? They don't put limits on themselves. They haven't even started to put any kind of limits on themselves, and it's an advantage when it comes to learning, and it's an advantage from a mindset perspective. I think that's really well said. What else? Why else do they learn fast?
Failure's not in their vocabulary.
Just not in their vocabulary yet, right? It's not in their vocabulary yet.
Children they just view the world, everything is in awe. Everything is just, and they're excited about it. And so they don't know what depression is yet. So they don't have this filter of why I can't do this and why I can't do that. No filters, you said the empty glass, but everything's just awe-inspiring. So they go for it. And their level of curiosity is at the highest peak it will ever be, other than my wife's. So yeah.
Imagine Carol Joy at 4. Dear God, I bet it was better. I bet it was even crazier wanting to know about more things. So if you think about that's dead on. At 4, do you have an ego yet at 4?
No.
If they started at 4, have you started to define who you are as a person? right? Do you believe that you have anything innate in you, or do you just kind of believe you're all doing and all knowing, and right? You don't have an ego. So a failure, to us as adults, we have egos, and we've defined ourselves in certain ways. And so a failure could mean that our definition or how people perceive us is very different than it should be, right? And there are just so many things. If you think about young children, they don't define themselves. You guys got that. They don't concern themselves with other opinions, right? Does a 4-year-old care, Jonathan, about someone else's opinion?
He'd rather be naked all day long.
I can't get my daughter to put clothes on. She's running on the beach. And I'm like, stop it.
That's right.
You have like one more year where you can get away with that. It's creepy after a while.
Keep pushing that boundary, please.
That's right. They don't let ego make their decisions. We do as adults. Our egos make decisions for us. We're not aware of it always, but they make decisions for us. And they don't have a reputation to defend. They're not defending anything.
They have a one-word vocabulary too. Why?
That's another reason why they're incredible salespeople,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Good salespeople ask why when you say no.
Right.
They don't get nervous or argue.
Tell me more.
Good salesperson says, "Tell me why you just said no to me," right? Simple, right? But kids are real good at that. I'm not accepting your answer of no. You're right. They don't really accept failure. They don't see it as failure, but they don't accept it, right? And so a lot of times we can learn from the youngest around us, the way they interact with their environment, the way they do things, because we get jaded, we get biased, we change as we get older. Our opinions start to form decisions we make, and we don't take the same chances that little children do that help them learn to go do things, right? My son, you guys are used to coming to the beach. You guys see those little boards you slide along on the beach, and you jump on it, and you can kind of surf on the
Boogie board?
boogie board,
No,
right?
no,
Yeah.
no.
Slide along. I'm not good at it, but my son got one, and he just kind of kept jumping and falling off, and my wife was like, "Get on it and show him." I'm like, "Hell no, I'm not gonna do that." Laughing me up there, I'm not getting on that thing, I've never done it. My son just falling all over the place, didn't care, and after about 15 times, he's now flying around on the beach. I didn't even try, right? My fixed mindset got in my way that I couldn't do it, I'm too old. And so failure, think about failure as it relates to the scientific method, right? Go back to your middle school science classes and thinking about the scientific method. Why is failure so critical in science?
Experimentation.
Because you learn something. every
Learn
time.
something with every failure, right? And
Yeah.
you tweak it and you change it a little bit, right? Think about it from an evolution perspective. Why is failure important?
So we don't get more Nelsons?
Oh, goodness.
I was expecting that from Greg. We can convene now.
Mission accomplished.
Damn, I like this group.
Well,
It's
yeah,
that kind of party.
but back a second to the your first one. Why is failure important on the side? First thing that comes to my mind is Einstein. You know, all the time. You know, and Edison. Edison.
I only had
Edison on all those failures. If it weren't for those hundreds and hundreds and ever how many thousands of failures, we wouldn't
10,000.
have all this stuff we got.
Yeah.
That's right. We have air
10.
conditioning, we have light, we have electricity. We're sitting here comfortable in a room, right? Thousands of years ago, this would just be dry earth in a cave, and there's wild animals, and we're trying to protect ourselves. Humans figured it out over time, and when you get into that,
But what about appreciation?
what's
If you
that?
don't have a failure, you can't appreciate something. If you just succeed at everything, it's just it's kind of like getting fed by a silver spoon in a sense. There's no the appreciation goes away. So when you fail at different things growing up, then you have more appreciation for for when you do succeed.
I love that.
And I think that's based around for all of us in our own ways.
And think about that, Casey, there's a high percentage of depression in children that grow up in very wealthy families because they haven't had to go earn. There's nothing worth having. They can just snap their fingers and have things. And a lot of times we look at it, we're like, they had everything. And that was the problem, is they didn't earn anything, so nothing was fun, nothing was interesting, nothing was exciting. That's exactly right. Think about evolution, right? You think about, this is how we initially dealt with bear attacks. We tried to outrun bears.
I thought that was a big red dog.
how did that work? How was that approach? How did that work when you just tried to outrun a bear?
Probably not so
Not so
well.
well.
Right? So that guy tried to outrun him while the rest of the tribe watched. Right? And the rest of the tribe was like, let's not try to outrun a bear next time. And so then they created crude weapons to fight bears. Right? So this good-looking hammer here, this is what he's doing. And she's watching what's about to happen. How do you think that worked out? How did that weapon work out? Not good. And so then they thought, let's go at him with 3 guys and spears. And how did that work out?
They got it.
Not good for that guy.
Not good. And every time someone would get mauled by a bear, the rest would come together and be like, let's not try that again. That would be a different approach. And today we have this. We don't lose to bears anymore. We've gotten smart, and bears didn't get any smarter. They kept chasing after us with claws, right? So that, and I like that you said Edison, because a lot of times, I'm going to get to the growth mindset. Carol Dweck has done a lot of work on this. She's a psychologist. She wrote the book. If you haven't read the book Mindset, it's phenomenal. It's worth reading that entire book. She wrote that book and she pioneered a lot of the growth mindset topic. But what she asks students all the time is, close your eyes and visualize Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb. What do you see? And what she typically gets is, an older guy in a white lab coat, and this great eureka moment happens, the bulb flickers and it's on. And that's kind of it, right? Because in their mind, they're thinking he's just this brilliant genius that something popped into his head, right? When the truth is, it was years and years. There were 30 people on Edison's team. He had scientists with PhDs on his team. They probably went through several thousand filaments to get the right thing. Multiple times he thought about quitting, wanted to quit. He was depressed for a while about it.
He was working in the dark, too.
That's exactly right. In candles, trying to figure out how to do it. But if you think about it, his genius was in his ability to overcome failure. His genius wasn't his ability to just visualize something and do it. He failed over and over and over and over, and that was his genius as an inventor, is he was willing to keep at it a lot longer than the average person. That was his genius. It had nothing to do with his IQ. It was much more about his effort, right? And his ability to overcome failure.
He didn't say it's a failure, he just said it's 10,000 ways he learned not to do something.
That's right.
100%, right? Henry Ford says the same kind of thing with the assembly line, right? That the thing wasn't just kicking right at first. He just kind of kept tweaking the thing over time until the thing was humming. So who wants to share a failure? Maybe one specific to your business.
Which one?
And how you grew from it. Yeah, let's talk about it. You can't say Jonathan, that'd be mean.
That would be me.
That'd be mean.
I retired, well, first retirement, I really don't like the word retirement, so I don't plan on retiring anytime soon.
My man.
I did switch jobs and transitioned into a vending machine operation, and that lasted 5 years and about $250,000 down.
So what'd you learn from it?
Not to do vending. Explore real estate, some other option.
How have you approached real estate differently after going through that experience?
He's much more cautious.
So you probably charged into that a little too fast without enough planning, or?
Definitely. But I've done a lot of things like that. And some of them have worked. Timber investment. Yeah.
Charge right into that one.
Well, actually, I have 2 other
Yeah,
kids, so
youngest.
some of them have worked.
Who else wants to share one? Who else wants to share a failure and how you grew from it?
Well, when I was in the military, I was a pretty good swimmer and went to a course to basically train survival, water survival, and practiced, for I guess it was probably 6 months, and I was ready. Fit. I knew what was going on. I was, had simulated, takedowns and stuff, and I got to the training and I ended up getting nervous, and I ended up, getting taken down and ended up getting, kicked out of the course, and it was something that I strive for, but it was a huge, letdown. So
When you look back at it now, you can share it now without as much emotion as probably if I'd asked you to share that story the day after it happened.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so when you look at it, what did you learn from it? How did you grow from it?
Well, sitting back now, I should have went back and gone to the next qual, but I didn't go back to the next qual, so I sit back today, I guess it's been 8 years now, and I look back and I say, I should have went for the next one, but I stepped away. So now it's more of a, continue to pursue. And same thing with what I'm doing here. And then when you have good people like Crystal that keep you, on track and, can give you those moments of inspiration, it makes a big difference. So,
Yeah, yeah.
kind of
It's
we're not
funny.
changing, but-
No, well, when you look back on it, Casey, a lot of times where I've been in a situation like you're talking about, looking back on it years later, the regret is worse than what a second failure would have been, right? When you look back on it, at the time, you're like, I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to fail again. But then later, you look back on it, you're like, I should have tried. What the hell? Another failure. I already had one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a lot of times that's the way it is. And if you can think about, a lot of times, if you can think about, how will I feel if I don't try this again? Or how will I feel if I don't put myself out there in 5 years, 10 years from now, looking back for not trying? Will that hurt worse than trying this and failing it, right? Because normally it's just short term. And a lot of times we put too much weight on what other people think anyway when you fail, when really most people don't really care. They're all only thinking about themselves and their own failures and their own problems. And when you look back at it, I think that's a really good way of seeing it, is I should have went to another one, because what would the harm have been? I'd already had one failure. Just keep trying a little bit, right? That internal of what you feel is usually worse than what other people's perception of you when something goes wrong.
And normally it's your own self-doubt or whatever, because in all actuality, the people that are training and they see you coming back for a second time, you're actually looked a little bit more honored in their eyes in a sense. So the more you try, the more you almost get respect in a sense, in the long run.
There's a grinder, right? He's back. He went, he pushed himself, he's back. But Americans love those stories, right? We all love those stories. Those stories are the best stories, when someone kind of rises up from something that didn't go well. Who's that? Anyone else want to share one? A third?
Go ahead.
Used to be,
How do I pronounce your name? Dietmar?
Dietmar.
Dietmar,
Yes.
okay.
Used to be a terrible husband, asked my wife.
She's like used to.
Straight after 50 years.
Why are we talking in past tense?
No, I think, well, go ahead.
We have been-
Just right there.
We have been married for 52 years, and
Congrats.
and I tried to get rid of him 15 years ago, and wanted a divorce, and then he said, let's at least do only a separation, and he was still trying, and I'm still trying to get a divorce. And last,
We've already heard this.
But keep going, I'm fascinated. I want to make him sweat. This is great.
and then we had an appointment in San Diego where we used to live, and we still live, and so then we got there, we had the appointment, and then we got there, and we looked both on that paper, and it was the wrong date. And we were supposed to be here today, and now we had to postpone it, and who knows what happens next.
But you figured it out. Like, it was humbling to you,
Yeah.
and you decided, this is something I really want. I don't want to fail at this, right? And you grow from it. You become a better husband, a better
Yeah, and
man, a
now
better
he's
person.
getting great.
Now he's making it happen. Huh? He's making it happen.
After 52 years.
Here's another 50. You're a quick learner.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So I love the fact that this room is comfortable. That's the beauty of these mastermind groups, is you get comfortable sharing personal things and being vulnerable, because that's incredibly important in a mindset. And I think it's an incredibly exciting reason to be in a mastermind in general, is you have people that can hold you accountable and you can be vulnerable. The more vulnerable you are, the more you grow. The more you can be honest with yourself, the more you can learn, the more you grow in general. So I love that you guys share those.
The last 3 letters of failure keep reminding me of something. The way to overcome failure is you are enthusiastic. Stay enthusiastic. Believe in yourself.
Love it. Love it. So, I want you all to tell me how these words make you feel when people say them to you.
I will try, I will do my best. Hopefully, if you're talking to a subcontractor, if you're talking to a realtor, if you're talking to a title company about a settlement date and you're asking if they're going to close Friday and they say we're going to do our best. How do you feel? I'm feeling emotion. I'm feeling emotion. Why do people do this?
They give themselves an out.
Yeah.
Give themselves an out. How does it make you feel about them as a professional?
They're not going to try real hard.
Is it even worth saying those words? Is it even worth in life saying those words?
No.
Right? And how often do you hear them in business though?
We're immune to them, we really don't hear them, because we're saying them.
You don't hear them because you're ignoring it. You're like a 4-year-old saying, no, say something real. That was a waste of time. But how often do people try to say that to you? Right? Think about how ludicrous these words are. What if you're in a restaurant, you say, can you make sure there's no nuts in the pasta? I'm allergic and I could die. And they say, are you eating that plate when it shows up in front of you? Are you going to eat the food when it comes, when they tried to keep the nuts out of your plate? No. What if you're in a hotel and you ask for a wake-up call at 6 a.m. and they say, hopefully we'll get to it? Are you sleeping? Think about that. Are you going to sleep well if you have an important business meeting and they hopefully will call you at 6 to wake you up? How about this last one? My wife says, can you pick our daughter up from preschool today at 12:30? And I say, I'll try. And she's like, thanks, honey, and hang up the phone. Thinking 50-50, my daughter's bawling in front of the preschool and I didn't show up, right? It's ridiculous to think about those examples, but you hear people say them all the time in business, right? You hear them say it all the time, and there's a definition around this, there's a psychological reason for it. It's called self-handicapping. Self-handicapping, right? And even though this room feels like these are ridiculous, right, to say in business, I'll bet that all of you self-handicap on a regular basis and you don't even know it, right? So I kind of consider these weak words, right? When I was a manager, if you came in my office and said them, I would make you rewind and say, try that again, right? Normally, what someone was just telling me is, you're giving me too aggressive of a target, right? That deadline's too much, that you're asking me to deliver too much, I'm not confident. So it was an opportunity normally for me to just ask questions of, why are you hesitating? You can negotiate the ask, right? So I would normally make them rewind, but you never got to leave my office by saying one of those 4 things, right? And I imagine it's probably tough to get everyone in this room off the phone if you say that to someone. But that's self-handicapping. There's a reason why people do this instead of using power words. I will, I can, I commit to, I promise. And the definition of self-handicapping, it's a cognitive strategy in which people avoid effort in the hopes of keeping potential failure from hurting self-esteem. So think about that. You're avoiding potential failure hurting your self-esteem, right? So if I tell you it's very important that this home settles on Friday and you say, I'll try, and it doesn't close on Friday, it closes next Wednesday, and I call and I'm frustrated with you that it didn't happen. You can say, I never said it was going to close on Friday. I said I would try, and so I've succeeded in trying. I succeeded, you failed, you didn't get your settlement date, that must suck for you, but I succeeded in trying, right? You're setting yourself up with the lowest bar you possibly can, to avoid a self-esteem hit of just failing, right? Because that hurts more to have to say, I did tell you it would close on Friday and it certainly didn't and I blew it. So you're gonna just go ahead and give yourself an excuse before you even start. But when you say I will try, when you say I'll do my best, when you say hopefully, when you say that, think about that as yourself. When you say that, what do your actions then do?
Just unwind from it, I'm not committed to it.
Yeah, your actions will absolutely follow that kind of verbiage when you say it, right? When you self-handicap like that, subconsciously, when you say it out loud, subconsciously, you are absolutely not going to give the same effort you would than if you gave a power word or you committed very strongly to
Like you
something.
immediately put it to the back burner. It's not an important thing for you.
It's no longer important.
Especially if they accept it.
If they accept it, you have just taken the accountability completely off. It's all upside for me. If I get something done, I'm a hero, right? But if I don't get it done, I didn't really commit to you and I got you off the phone, right? As quick as I could. And so there's 2 ways that we do this. We either create an obstacle before we even attempt the task, right? So we create one, or we created an excuse prior to the task by lowering the expectations. And number 2 is kind of the I try, some of that language, but there's a lot more ways that you can do it. So, a good example, let's say this whole room, we were all going to run in the Atlantic Beach 10K. And just to show you the kind of extensive preparation I do for these meetings, that's an actual picture from the Atlantic Beach 10K. So we're all gonna run in it, and we're all getting ready to go, and you're nervous because you're a runner, but you're afraid you're not gonna do well. What are some obstacles you could create before the race so that you would have an excuse later? Real obstacles.
Don't stretch.
What's that?
Don't stretch out.
Don't stretch. Just don't stretch at all. Just immediately jump in. Yes, that's an obstacle you could create that you should do before a race.
Break your leg.
Extreme. But I'm going to have to say yes. That actually, you could break your leg. You could literally break your leg. That would be a good obstacle you could create. Never heard that one before. I like you. You are draconian. You are like it. What else? What's another obstacle?
Poor nutrition.
Poor nutrition, right? Just eat terribly the day before or weeks leading up to it. Just eat terribly. What else?
Stay up way too late the night before and not get my sleep.
Stay up all night, right? So we're all there in the starting line, and we're all stretching out, right? Except for Dan, he's not stretching because he needs his excuse, and his legs broke, so she was in. I roll up late, and you guys are all there, and I say, man, I am dying. I was out all night. I was out all night. And you guys are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, God, my head hurts. I drank too much last night. I just got in an hour ago. You're all like, why the hell did you do that? You knew you were running a race. I'm like, I don't know. But when I sucked in the race, right? You all know there's a reason why I sucked in the race. I've just not protected my self-esteem. You all know that I didn't give my best in this race. So and normally we would do that because, like, especially if you all thought I was a big runner, right? If I was the only runner in the room, I might be the person that went and did that. All of you are just running for fun, but I'm a competitive runner. I stay out all night because then if I lose to someone in this room, I could be like, yeah, but you slept and weren't drinking a lot of whiskey, right? You'd be like, well, yeah, weren't we all supposed to do that? So, Lisa, I'm adding break my leg on this to the next presentation. But, wearing an old pair of shoes, or wearing a brand new pair of shoes out of the box. So afterward, you could be like, I got a blister at the 3rd mile, right? And it just was killing me. And I wore those old shoes and I shouldn't have. Or, not showing up at all, right? That sounds crazy, but just not coming. Getting yourself so worked up that you want to protect your self-esteem that you don't even come to the race. You just don't post, right? What are some excuses or justifications? Not creating an obstacle, but just creating an excuse. Let's say the morning of, you just want to casually slip something out of a justification of why you might not do great in the race.
The alarm didn't go off on time.
So I'm late, so I'm running late and I'm kind of haggard and didn't get my preparation in because my alarm didn't go off. That's a good excuse.
Yeah.
Not feeling bad.
Weather. I'm not used to running in temperatures this hot, right? I'm from Michigan. I'm used to running when it's cold and it's really hot today in Atlantic Beach. I never run when I run on a treadmill. I never run when it's this hot and humid out. Right? But that's an excuse, right? I casually slip that out. I just want everyone to know I've never run in the heat before. I always run on.
And this migraine's killing me.
I got a migraine, man. I got a migraine right now. What else? What are other things you could just say?
I think I might be coming down.
I might be coming down with a cold, right? I'm a little dehydrated. I had a cold a week ago.
No, one of my best friends just passed away.
Yeah, I'm sad. I'm going through some things emotionally, right? So you kind of see this, right? I'm not a morning person, right? This is an 8 a.m. I always run at like 8 p.m. so my body's kind of off, right? You kind of say something like that, or or I've heard people do this one. I just missed the cutoff for the next 8 Everyone know I am the oldest person. I'm 40 to 49. I literally missed it. I spoke to the next bracket. I'm the oldest person in this bracket. Right? Jay, what are you laughing at?
Because David's done it. By the way, you all, I failed to introduce. You all know Coach David. All of y'all have been on platinum session calls with him. Y'all, let's say good morning to Coach David.
Hey, he did not tell me that before. That wasn't
I've
loaded.
done that. Don't fight now.
He only enters races where he's in there.
I gotta tell you, this is a very extra room on self-handicapping. One of the things we guys are really good at this. You're really good at it. And we all do it. I've used some of those excuses. I've done some of those things, right? There's been studies with college students who have a fixed mindset, who define themselves as smart, right? People have been telling them they're smart their whole life, who literally will sabotage themselves on tests. They will stay out all night, or they won't study, so they can tell people, because they would rather get a bad grade with a reason than get an average or below average grade while people thought they worked hard, right? They would rather that happen. That's how strong the fixed mindset can sink in with people, you know, and it's something that you've got to be aware of when you're doing it, when you're posting some of that. By the way, since we're wrapping up kind of quick today, if you gotta pee, please get up and go pee. You're not gonna offend me anytime you wanna go. We're not gonna take a break because we gotta get through some of it. And I'll share one of my own, right? So I'm glad you all hate the term retire, okay? So I left my company in January. I've been there 13 years. Most people in the company assumed I would be there until I retired in 20 years, right? It was shocking to a lot of people when I left the company, because I was a pretty loyal guy. 13 years, a long time, and I've been in a really good position making great money for a long time. But the months leading up to it, I knew I was gonna leave, and actually I started thinking about it 2 years before, because I just wasn't getting much fulfillment anymore. It had become routine, right? It had become, Jay's joking about the billion and the zeros, but to me it had just gotten numb to, it wasn't exciting, right? Every year was 10% more of the same thing I'd done the year before that. And I knew I wanted to go a couple of different routes. I shared this with Nelson and Jonathan before. I wanted to get into commercial real estate and go a path that my father-in-law had done, but I knew I needed a lot more time than I had to go do it. I knew I wanted to consult for smaller businesses, because I'd been at GE, I'd been at the biggest, and I'd been at a pretty damn big company in MBR, and I wanted to consult small businesses. I wanted to do that. And I want to do more of this. I want to do more training, teaching, helping people with their careers. But I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just knew that's what I'm going to go do in my next career. And my plan in my head was I'm going to spend 2018 talking to as many smart people as I can and figure out how I do all three of those things. Great, my wife is on board, I'm on board, we're in a good financial position where we can take 18 to figure out what we want to do. I start getting calls as soon as people find out I'm leaving the company. Everyone's calling me, right? At the time, I don't even know how to get commercial real estate. I don't even know how to get in front of a group like this, because all I've been doing is talking to people in my company for 13 years. And I really have no idea which businesses I'm going to consult. So I'm embarrassed to say any of those three things because I've done nothing yet, right? And in my head, you're programmed to, you never leave a company until you have something else lined up, right? That's how we're all programmed, right? People come, you give your notice to your boss, I'm going to work here, here's 2 weeks, I already have an offer, I got something lined up. I had nothing lined up, right? And I was a little embarrassed by that, right? People had known me as a hard worker. I'd never taken a week off in my life to this point of not having a job or a paycheck, and now people are asking what next? And I didn't know what to say. So I would just say, I'm retired. I'd say I'm retired. And I would make a joke of it. So what are you doing with your time? I'm feeding squirrels. I'm naming a few of the one with the little white stripe. You know, I would just tell jokes, right? Like trying to, but, and people would laugh and be like, come on, you're 41 years old, you're not retired. I'm like, I am, it's great. I'm spending time with my kids. And then I would start defending it. Like, what's wrong with retiring? If I have money, what's wrong with spending time with my children and my family and haven't I earned? And what I found was, I started acting like a retired guy. I started sitting around reading the paper all day and grumbling about the kids on my grass, and I started like walking around tinkering in the house, right, trying to fix the screw on the washing machine, and I was unhappy. I knew all the things I wanted to do, but I wasn't getting started on it because out of my mouth, every time someone asked me, I would protect my ego and say I'm retired. Right? Because I wanted you to know that I didn't need to work, so quit asking me about it. And I would get frustrated about it.
right? And the truth was, my wife knew, she was the only one that knew that I was really unhappy because I wasn't producing anything. I wasn't fulfilled, I wasn't doing enough, right? And she would say, quit telling people you're retired. You're not retired, you're miserable being retired. Stop it, tell people what you want to go do. And it was the best advice she could have given me. I was self-handicapping and I didn't even know it, right? I thought I was making a joke, but my actions were actually becoming what I was saying to people. I'm here today because I told a really good friend of mine who has a real estate company similar to you that I'm bored. And he'd been asking me for 2 months, what's going on? And every time I'd be like, man, I'm having a great time. I'm playing baseball with my kid, I'm coaching, I'm doing this. And I would protect my ego. And then finally I was like, I'm miserable, dude. I got to figure out, do something. He was like, come with me in Miami. Real single family, the IMN conference. Just come down there. I know you're not into single family, but come with me and meet some other guys that have started business. Okay, I went down there. I met Jason Medley. He runs the mastermind that Jay is a member of. It's a very large mastermind. Hit it off well with him. He asked me about my background. I told him what I wanted to do. He said, man, I think a lot of our members would love that. Will you come to San Diego and do the keynote? That sounds good. Flew to San Diego, gave a keynote in front of 120, 150 people. Met Jay. Jay asked me, what are you doing? I didn't say I'm retired. I said, Jay, I really want to figure it out. What are you doing? And I'm here today. Because I quit saying I'm retired, right? As soon as I quit saying I'm retired, I started telling people I wanted to get into commercial real estate. I had no idea how to do that. But the more I told them, the more phone calls I made, the more cold calling. I started calling banks, I started calling realtors, I started looking at deals. Every day looking at deal flow. I've got 2 collision centers now that I've pretty much figured out how to go acquire and close on in 4 months. And I knew nothing about that just 4 months ago because I quit saying I'm retired, right? And it's important that I share this with you because I was failing myself. I knew what I wanted to do in my life and my career, and I wouldn't let myself be vulnerable enough, and I had my guard up. I wanted people to think I was something I wasn't, which was a vulnerable, stressed out guy thinking every day, why'd you do this, right? Why'd you do this? And I started telling people that. And then they were like, how do we help? How do we help you? And all of a sudden, help came in, right? And it's the best example I could give you of myself in self-handicapping that I've personally gone through. And so I want you to all think, this is going to be our first little break here that we take, where you write down a little bit and you go through it. I want you to think about a task, or probably even more a goal, where you might have demonstrated some self-handicapping behavior, right? It could be something you're living with right now, or it could be something from the past. So think about the examples I've given you with the race and in myself and what I want to do with my career and how my words weren't living up to what I wanted. And I want you to think about where have you maybe created some obstacles before you even attempted to go after that goal, or where have you created some justifications and excuses prior to a task? I know no one would say this in this room, but a good example is, I hear people say this all the time, real estate's a hobby of mine. What does that mean, right? What are they doing? What are they doing when they say that? Think about it. All I just told you, what are you telling me when you say real estate's a hobby?
You don't take it seriously.
What happens when you don't close one deal this year? What have you done for yourself?
It was only a hobby anyway.
It was a hobby. I never told you I was serious about real estate. I said it was kind of fun. I'm in and out. Do they really believe that when they say that? Does anyone really say real estate's a hobby? Is real estate that fun, like collecting baseball cards? It's a pain in the ass. It's a grind. Real estate is tough, right? You don't do that for a hobby. You take pictures of butterflies for a hobby. You do single-family home flips. Like, it's not a hobby. So when you say that, you're protecting yourself, right? You're protecting yourself that if it all doesn't work out, I never told anyone this was my career, right? And so I said that. So that might be one example, and I know no one in here would do that because you're a part of a group like this. But think through where you might have done some self-handicapping. So take some time, take 5 or 10 minutes. If you got to go to the bathroom, use this time if you'd like to. But really write this down. Think about a couple of those and try to get very personal with yourself and honest with yourself. Try to be vulnerable on this. Okay, so what I'd love to hear what you guys are writing down. I see you writing a lot. So that's good. That's good. If you didn't write anything, you're not going to get anything out of this. So what kind of things were you thinking about as you were writing, as you were going through this exercise? Right.
Now, I wrote that I stayed out all night, and then when I got home, talked on the phone before taking the SAT twice.
Did you really?
Yeah, I
That's
did.
a true story.
True story.
Yeah.
'Cause I was
Yeah.
good in school, got good grades, but like, SAT, everybody's taking this, so I might not be as smart as I think I am. So
That's one of those really good examples where everyone seems to know everyone's number,
yeah,
and you
Yeah.
wanted to have something built in of why my number might not be number one,
yeah.
right? Wow.
So I succeeded.
Stayed out all night. At least you didn't break your leg before the SAT. It's an excuse would have sucked, and everyone would be like, hey, why just it had nothing to do with your score. Now you got a broken leg and a bad SAT score.
What's funny, I did the exact same thing. I was going to take it, they were blowing the horn outside, I'd stay out all night. Still in bed.
You guys were out together, weren't you? Back in the day.
Yeah, that's fixed mindset. It's worse, right? That's
I was on the
self-handicapping.
phone with her.
Yeah.
You know,
I was on the phone with her.
oh, okay.
I use the phrase a lot, I need to. So when I start prioritizing my day and a list of things that I have to get done, she hears it all the time. I need to do this. I need to, but not I will do.
Mhm. That's
So there
right.
are a lot of things I'll throw on that list that I'm already knowing in the back of my mind, I'm not going to get them done today. But I need to get them done. I need to get the trash out. I need to get the pool cleaned. I need to make these seller calls.
Yeah.
And then I start putting everything in front of it because I don't make it I have to or I will do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's self-handicapping to say you need to, because when you don't get it done and the garbage is still sitting there, you never committed to anything.
That's right. I need
Right.
to. Just,
And the garbage is still there
Yeah.
because your actions follow up
that's right.
what you're saying out loud.
She's laughing because she knows that's exactly what I do right now. But I can own that. So, you know, there you go.
Well, now you can blurt self-handicapper. Blurt it.
All right, so all that I just said, I made up. Absolutely cool. I just wanted to
No,
talk.
you didn't. The trash actually is still
Lisa,
out
you
there.
In high school, my father told me girls cannot do chemistry and physics. And then I thought, okay, I cannot do it, so I never paid attention. I didn't study, and I didn't get good grades in physics because I was just too lazy.
Or in your mind, it wasn't lazy.
Yeah, no,
in
I-
your
I-
mind, you had it fixed that no amount of effort is going to help me, so I'll put my effort into something that will help me grow, right? That's that kind of self-limiting. I love
Yeah,
you brought that up because we're going to talk earlier about the importance of having someone you can rely on that pushes you, that tells you you can grow. That's kind of the opposite, right? Of
Yeah.
we all have some influences in our life that kind of tell you couldn't do something, right? And you immediately stop trying because you figure, what's the point of effort?
Yeah, I
Right?
didn't even start.
What's the point of effort? I'm going to waste all this time and I'm still not going to be really that good at it, right?
She married somebody that was good at
What?
Maybe coincidence, maybe not.
What else? What else did you guys write down? What were you thinking about on this one?
When I was in high school, playing football, the sprinting was a big part of football, and I always told people I'm more of a distance runner because I wasn't very fast. But then, whenever I joined the military, distance running was important. So I told her, "Well, I'm a much stronger rusher. Carrying a rucksack, I could carry a rucksack wherever. I didn't have to do it fast. I could just do it all day." So that was my excuse for not getting a fast PT score on the run. But then now I just tell
But did
everybody,
it-
I'm just not much of a runner.
Which would be a good excuse. 10K.
Well, but to that point, my wife and I, neither one of us, honestly, we've never really been much of a runner. We've never made that commitment. Well, we have recently made that commitment. We're doing a 5K plan, and then she's wanting to do the Disney half marathon in February. So that's what we're working towards.
But
That's 2020.
No, that's next year.
That's, just telling people
Right.
you're going to run in that race is going to push you to go train,
Yeah.
right? If you don't tell anyone.
Well, I'm not running in the race. You have to dress like your favorite Disney princess. I told her, like, I'll support you. And I'll train with you, but I'll, wave at you as you pass by. I'm not going to be that guy.
Make a good Moana. You can go Moana, maybe.
That's right. I'll push the stroller.
At least not in public.
That's right.
Maybe Ariel, I can see.
Almost there.
Yeah, what happens at the mastermind?
You give them another year, I bet they'll have a guy princess. So you might be safe.
What were you writing down, Jay?
Yeah, well, something that still to this day I have a self-handicapping, self-limiting belief is like, I still like regarding my weight. So I've gained and lost 40 pounds about 4 times over the last 20 years, and I'm like in between right now, And so this belief I have is I inherited my dad's body type, So that's the way my dad was. I got pictures of my granddad that I never met. That's the way he looked. I inherited it. This is the way I am. So, I know that's a belief that can be changed, but
Yeah.
it's self-limiting.
But somewhere subconsciously, you're thinking, what's the point of exercising too much?
Exactly.
It's not going to pay off. It's genetics, right?
That's right.
Rather than, I can do something about this.
Well, I know I can do something about it because I've done it,
Yeah.
but I didn't stay with it.
It's always there. You're always having to fight it. It's always sitting in the back.
I recognize that voice that you were just using. In my head,
Yeah?
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Same problem you've experienced, but I blame my mom for genes.
Yeah. Right? And that's
But that's a
self-handicapping.
choice.
Yeah.
That's a choice.
It's self-handicapping. You don't recognize you're doing it, but it's self-handicapping. Anyone write anything down that's business related? Anyone have something in your business you wrote down?
I have a question. I am convinced that I cannot work the internet. And I'm proving it because I'm doing it and it doesn't work. So how do I change I know I should be able to do it. How do I change my mindset?
Some of it is in just the language you use. Some of it is in how you talk about it, right? So I would say, instead of saying I can't do the internet, I would start saying I'm learning more about the internet every day. You might not be giving yourself enough credit for what you're learning. So you get flustered because you want to be expert, right? You're expert in certain things.
No, I'm far away from
Or
it.
competent, right? You want to be competent, but
Yeah.
what you're not doing is giving yourself credit for the first day you tried and where you've got to today, right? So you're making progress. You may be just not practicing as much as you could. So start saying things like, I need to practice on the internet more, or I need, and work with people that are good on the internet that can help you, right? So it's the same as finding a coach, right? And we'll talk about that later. A lot of times you just need to find someone who's good at explaining it to you and showing it to you, but it's really just a matter of practice, right? When you're saying that, this is one of my self-handicaps, is I'm lousy as a handyman, right? I say it all the time. I'm not real good at, it's gotten to the point where I don't change a light bulb and I say it to my wife, right? Like, well, it's kind of high up there and I might fall. So, but I get all nervous, right? When I have to do like any kind of home repair, home maintenance, home anything, and the truth is I don't like it. I hate it. So I don't want to study it and learn it and figure it out. And I usually take shortcuts. I start on like step 5 and then it turns out bad when I do it, and then my wife's mad at me, and then I just blurt, well, I'm not good at this stuff anyway. Let's hire someone to do it, right? And the truth is, I need to start saying, I need to learn more about home repair, home maintenance, because there's nothing about it that's inherently in my intelligence that I can't put together a table or do something from IKEA, right? There's no reason I can't. I just choose not to. I hate it. So I don't, I limit myself by saying that over and over and over and over. When the truth is, I should just be saying, I need to invest a little more in this and get better at it. Part of it is I just don't like it. So it could be you just don't like the internet, but if it's important to your business, you've got to start changing that language to, I need to invest in different ways to learn it, right, and practice it.
I was gonna say direction, like to say, you know, 'cause I know you want to learn the internet because you've said it multiple times here, and so you can, I mean, you can tell that you want to. But say Ian and I are gonna go meet in the front over here, and Ian goes and walks through that door, and I walk through that door, and I go, well, where have you been? I mean, well, you know, I've been here for a minute now, and you know, and then he says, well, I, you know, went this way, or you know, or say you want to go through that wall right there, and you start pushing on the wall, and I walk through the door, then I'm taking the direction to where I can learn it. And so, like you touched on consulting in a way of finding someone that, a tutor, because you're very, you like to pursue education, like you've said, you put a lot into these seminars, finding a right seminar or the right tutor to help you instead of trying to beat the computer screen yourself would be a direction that you could go that would help.
And sometimes being tutored and being around a group of other people that feel the same way as you, like if you were to sign me up for some kind of a home repair seminar, and I was in a room with even mildly competent people, I would probably break my leg before I went there. Stay up all night and then be on the phone when I was supposed to be there. I might go the Greg route or your route. I might break my leg. But if you told me they were all people that were like me, that just were scared to death of it and didn't know anything about it and not even good at turning a wrench at all, I would be more likely to go be in that room because I would be around other people at my development level and I wouldn't feel as intimidated to ask the questions I do. So sometimes it's just finding a group of people that are at the same learning level of you so you can grow with them to
Then
pick it
I
up.
would have to go in first class in school. I went to a college class to learn the internet, and I went to the lowest level, number 1, and then I showed up. I paid my dues, and I was looking for that class, and they said nobody signed up for this class because everybody at my age or even much lower, they know it all. And the little kids, they sit there and work on the computer, on the iPad.
I'll give you one story on the internet that when I was at General Electric, this is when I first started at GE, Jack Welch was still the CEO. So legendary CEO, the internet came along and he was way behind the curve. And so he made all of his top executives and his board pick a mentor who was under the age of 25 to teach them about the internet. And in turn, they would reverse mentor and teach them about business, and they created a reverse mentorship program. And Jack Welch talks about how frustrated he was in learning the internet. But he found someone very young who was very patient, and in return, he gave back, right? So he taught them about business, about sales, about finance. And the whole company went through that period where they did these reverse mentorships where a lot of folks who had 30, 35 years in the business but knew nothing about the internet found a mentor who was actually a young kid coming out of college where this stuff was intuitive because they grew up doing it, right? And even someone like me, I grew up on the internet, but when you get into social media, I'm not strong. I'm not on it a lot. I don't do it enough. So I feel the same way you do about the internet, about social media. But I found some people that showed me a lot about it, and I'm getting better. I'm not highly competent, but I'm certainly a lot better than I was 6 months ago when I didn't need it at all working in a big corporation. Now I'm going to need it, and I'm having to learn it.
Hey, Ian, Chappie's got something.
Yeah, so what I find is that when I say I don't know how to do something, it's because it's too big. So when you say I don't know how to do the internet, what does that mean? Right? And so I think what will help you is if you break it down, what we call chunk it down to smaller bits and say, you know, even if you say, I don't know how to learn Facebook, that's still too big. Maybe if you just go, I don't know how to create an account on Facebook, then somebody can show you that step by step because now it's a small task that has a goal that you can accomplish easily. And then if you can break down those little small steps, next thing you know how to use Facebook because it's multiple little steps that you learn one at a time. Instead of, I don't know how to do Facebook, well, what does that mean? Because there's 1,000 things you can do on Facebook, and you don't know where to begin, you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, and you start mixing everything up.
It's like saying I don't know how to do real estate.
Exactly.
There we go. I just told you guys I don't know real estate. I'm frustrated. I've tried doing real estate a couple times. I'm terrible at it.
Absolutely.
You guys would be looking at me like I had a third eyeball. Like, what does that even mean? What exactly can we help you with, right? So I love what he's saying. With my dad, I taught him how to look up the Tiger score. That's one. Let me just show you a real simple one. I'm going to show you how to type in the website for ESPN.com, hit enter, click, find it. That's one thing. Next time I'll teach you something else. Now he's the place where he can use Google if he wants to look something up a little bit more. He's still not the greatest at it, but I just keep showing him one little thing at a time that he can kind of get his arms around, because he's right, the internet, that's a big scary, you know, it's like saying I don't understand the world. The internet's a big deal. And it's here to stay.
Yeah,
So
I'm
if you're hoping it's going to go away, I would probably be here a few more years. So these are all good things. So think more about it and find someone to talk to about some of these self-limiting things that you say or do. And when you look at this, we'll get through some of this because you guys have done this already. This is what I was talking about earlier. So this is the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. So fixed mindset is, you know, it leads to a desire to look smart and therefore a tendency to. And this leads to a tendency to grow, to learn. A fixed mindset believes that intelligence is inherited. It believes that women can't do science. That's fixed mindset. Whereas in the growth mindset is anyone can do science. I need to apply myself and work harder to get there, right? So someone with a fixed mindset, how do they view a challenge?
Step by step.
If you've got a fixed mindset, what do you think of when you think of a challenge?
Your way, there's no, other inputs, there's no counsel, it's just straight direction, A to B.
Only one way.
You either got it or you don't, so what's the point of a challenge if I don't have the skill, right? Whereas a growth mindset thinks what? There's got to be a way, right? So you're going to avoid a challenge if you're fixed mindset. You're going to stay out all night. You're going to embrace it if you're a growth mindset. What about obstacles? How do you see obstacles with the fixed mindset?
Go around it.
That would be the growth mindset. Growth mindset is trying to figure a way to overcome the obstacle.
It just gave you a reason not to continue.
Fixed mindset gives you an easy opportunity to quit, right? There's an obstacle. What's the point? What's the point? I'm going to keep coming back to that because that's a good one. What's the point of learning science? Women can't do science. What's the point of me spending 1 minute on it? That's an obstacle. I'm not getting around.
Can I, now this is a question. What about saying the obstacle is you need to climb over that wall or you get on the other side, but you just keep trying to climb up and you can't grasp anything, but there's pegs on this side instead of, having a fixed mindset saying that I can only try over here, I can't try over here. Is that right?
That's great. So the growth mindset, you believe that anything is possible, so you get more and more creative, right? With each failure, you only fail so many times before you think I can try a different approach. Whereas in fixed mindset, we try to scurry up the middle of the wall a few times and then quit and say, apparently I can't get there. With the growth mindset, obstacles are just there to be overcome, right? You'll keep finding ways to get there. The great CEOs of incredible companies that have seemingly grown from nothing can give you thousands of examples of obstacles that seemingly looked impossible to overcome, and they just, in their mind, kept thinking there's got to be a way to overcome this, right? Same with Edison going through it. What about effort? What do you think about for effort on a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset? How do you see effort?
Giving up as opposed to plowing on.
Perfect, right? Effort's pointless. They see effort as pointless or worse, and they see growth mindset, they see effort as the path to mastery. If I want to master this, all I've got to do is put in effort. What about criticism? How do you see criticism appear on the fixed mindset?
Annoying.
It's an annoyance, right? Do you want it? Are you asking for it? Are you seeking it out? Do you hear it when someone gives it to you? Or is it just noise, right? Whereas in the growth mindset, you're begging for someone to tell you. You learn from it, right? You ignore it on the fixed mindset. How about the success of others? Someone with a fixed mindset who sees someone who is very successful. Do they want to be around them?
I'm envious of it.
Well,
Yeah, you get envious.
they got a silver spoon. They're lucky.
That's exactly it. What do they start to do when they see success, right? They start to find all the reasons why they had an unfair advantage over you, right?
Yeah.
It comes down to I'm not a distance runner, right? Some people just, they're built to, and there's some facts around that. There's some genetics that you could be a little better, but you start to just say, well, they're good at it for a reason. They were born that way, or I know when I was younger, and I still have to fight this little. I grew up in a blue-collar town in Michigan. We didn't have much money. My dad was a steel worker. And whenever I would see someone successful and I found out their mom and dad were a lawyer or a doctor, I'd be like, of course.
Yeah, that's
Right? Of course. They didn't have to work for anything. They're successful because mom and dad probably gave a bunch of seed money to start, right? And so if your parents had a decent job, I always just discounted everything about your success, right? You didn't grow up hard scrabble, so you clearly aren't in the same league as me. I ignore your success. And that's the wrong mentality, right? I should try to get around those people and figure out what are they doing right, because that's not always true, right? So if someone with a fixed mindset they feel threatened by the success of others, right? And with the growth mindset, you try to surround yourself by people more successful than you, right? So that's the way to kind of think about those two. Tell me what you got from the reading. Tell me what you got from the reading.
Don't be George Costanza.
Don't be George Costanza. Seinfeld. Costanza's the best example of this. The best example. He makes you just sick watching him on that show. It just makes you want to choke him, right, when you see him on that show. What'd you guys take away? You're reading it, what are you feeling?
One of the biggest things that just shouted out to me was, and of course I was looking at myself. It was interesting to me, let's say I come in late here to this meeting, all right? Well, I got a reason, The traffic was horrible, the stoplights were out. I mean, it was a big thunderstorm and all this. But now, when you come into to the meeting, what's wrong with you? Couldn't you be here on time? The rest of us were here on time. Why are you late? So it's like these two different perspectives of, when it's you do it, well, what's wrong with you? When it's me do it, well, I got a reason.
Yeah, double standards.
Double standard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally double standard when it comes to this.
And so as a result, on the limelight thing, when I'm doing something that, could be perceived as not right, well, I'm shining the light not on myself and owning it and taking responsibility. I'm shining the light out there on the bad traffic. That's what caused it, not me.
Yep.
Sort of like your first story.
Shiny object, right? Get off of me. Don't look at me. It's not my fault. Look at this over here, right? What else? What else did you guys take away from reading this?
I just proved myself even more that somebody needs to come up with an invention where you take a rolling pen and roll over the words and it verbally comes out, so you can just hear it, because I don't like to read, and so
That's why they have audiobooks now.
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, it's one of my handicaps, but I'm trying to overcome it by making this invention. And if you could help me,
Casey,
that would
is
be really
this
cool.
your excuse for why you didn't read last night? Is he external limelighting right now?
It's a little bit.
Got it. Makes sense.
Nobody's invented
Well,
it.
when you invent that product, you
busy
will be
working.
your for that class.
I actually was I really felt like as I'm reading through pieces, I could see parts of me, parts of my family, parts of my kids. It got me very, very curious about, where to. It's all about you. It's But it got me really curious about, when we look at where do we start with that? How does that? Because I really look at, perspectives of like my family members and I, the differences, and some of us are very internal, some of us are very external in our limelight, and why so much so. But then I look at my kids and I wonder, where does it start? How do you change it? So it was just remarkable to me, because I did have a big psych background, so I understood locus of control and things like that, but I just really hadn't put a lot of time and effort into it more recently. It just really brought a lot of things to light. I was just remarkably aha'd by some of it.
It's an emotional chapter, right? 'Cause it's
Very
impossible to read it
much.
and not think about everyone around you and yourself.
And you, yeah,
And
really
things
look
that
at
maybe
yourself.
I thought I was good at, but I do a little bit of this
Yeah,
too
for
often.
sure.
I'm not as internal as I would like to believe I am. And
Absolutely.
when you talk about that too, when you're talking about your family, and where would my kids put me on the spectrum, right? Would they
For
put me
sure.
all the way to the right in internal limelight like I think I am? Or would they say, Mom steers towards external sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
You don't know.
absolutely.
It makes you think about it.
Yeah. So it was just really great material, but you really think about the people that you interact with in those conversations, and how can you help people redirect their light as well as yourself? How can you keep working on yourself so that your limelight's becoming more and more and more internal on those times where you have that tendency not to.
Yeah.
So.
What about everyone else?
I don't know if anybody else came across this phrase, but anybody and it kept being repeated throughout the chapter, locus of control.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Locus of control, and I never heard that phrase. And so I had to ask Ian and Coach David, what's locus of control? Even after I looked it up, I Googled, was locus a new word to anybody else, or am I the only one? I guess I'm the only one. And so, a locus of control, the point or the place of your
It's a
control.
place, yeah.
And so as we discussed through it, it was like, where is your control? Do you have your control, or are you giving your control to somebody else?
Yeah.
So I thought that was
I didn't get to read the chapter last night because both you and Jay failed.
It's all their fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's fascinating to me is that, and this is, to me, and Jay and I talked about this is the foundation of all personal development, is personal responsibility and internal alignment. But even while I was thinking about wanting to read the chapter and being ready, knowing what the chapter was about, I was blaming Jay and I was blaming you. Knowing that's what it's about. I guess to me, you can do it so much and it's so ingrained that you just almost, I'm not sure how you really, unless you just, like you said, ask somebody and said, tell me how I'm doing on this. Because I'm not sure you can see it yourself, really.
That's
That's a
I kind of
handicapping phrase right there.
I know.
I look at it like there's, just take a spectrum, right, where you're all the way internal here, all the way external here. No one really falls 100% on either. George Costanza, maybe all external. Maybe Abe Lincoln's all internal, okay, honest Abe. But most of us fall somewhere in the middle, right? Most of us fall somewhere in the middle, and it's, the important thing is being able to catch yourself when you're acting that way. The important thing is when things are going well, it's not as important to really ask yourself the hard questions as much, right? When you're rolling and things are going pretty well, it's when you get into adversity, really, where it's important to recognize and to really have a good idea of where am I right now, right? There are times where I am just killing it on internal limelight. I'm accountable, I'm into it, and then I take some setbacks and I start feeling bad for myself. I start becoming a victim. I start feeling bad for myself. And usually I know when I'm there because my failure, or however I'm feeling, lasts longer than it should, right? It lasts longer than it should, and I feel like I can't get out of it, right? When I'm on internal limelight, a setback is speed bump. I'm over it, I'm moving on, I'm in control, let's go. I don't feel lousy. Things might still be not going as well as they could, but I don't feel lousy about myself. I don't feel like a failure. I feel in control. I feel like I'm on top of it. When you give your locus of control external, you feel so stressed out because you feel like no matter what I do, things can't get better. I'm hoping that the situation just happens to get better around me, and there's no worse feeling than that. There's no worse feeling that's how people get depressed and don't get out of bed. What's the point of getting out of bed? What is the point of going out into the world? I'll just sit here and see how things turn out. I'll see how they evolve, right? That's how people get into a real deep depression. There are other reasons for it too, but some people get themselves there because they've given all of their control away to every other external factor than themselves. What can I do? What's your equation?
Oh
Jay, you were
yeah, I
telling me
love
about-
the equation, and most of y'all have heard me say this before. E plus R equals O. Remember me saying that, Lisa?
No, I never
E,
heard
you want to write this down.
Okay.
So E plus R equals O, which stands for the event plus the response equals the outcome. So event plus response equals outcome. So let me explain what that means. And I learned this from Jack Canfield. And this is all in the foundation of what Coach David just talked about, taking 100% responsibility. So I'll give two different examples. So the outcome is what you're experiencing right now. All right, the outcome of whatever. All right, the outcome. So let's go over here to a personal example of Coach David. So one big event well, let me let you tell the story, David. The event of your dad passing away when you were 7 years old. All right, play that out on the years of what you felt about that, the outcome, the response. The thing that I want you to listen to in this story, we are 100% responsible for the response. And there's some events we can't do anything about. David couldn't do anything about the event of his father passing away when he was 7. Okay? But we're always responsible, or 100% for the response. So for years you had one outcome, but then a few years back you have another outcome or feeling about it.
Well, the short version is that, I thought that, how could I learn to be a man and grow as a man, know how to be a husband, father, a man at all without having had a father? And so just lived in mediocrity and failure and just misery, and blamed it entirely on the loss of my dad. My dad died when I was 7. How could I ever amount to anything? And so that's what the outcome was for me until I took.
And now your outcome was mediocrity.
Yeah, mediocrity and failure,
right,
and misery and depression. So then when I changed my response to it and took responsibility for how I was, how I dealt with it, then I made a 180 on that and began to, live in excellence and success and all of that. So,
yeah, and so, Coach David was not responsible for the event of his father passing at 7, but he can change by how he's feeling about that and deal with it by being 100% responsible for the response. Think about the word, responsibility.
And I think one of the main things, what I've expressed to you, that losing my father made me a better dad in reality, because I know that I could be gone today and never see my kids again. So what that does is make me a more present, more involved father, knowing that I could die at any moment. So I'm the best dad I could ever have been by losing my dad, when initially I thought losing my dad eliminated any chance at success.
What was the turning point from being?
I just got sick and tired of being mediocre and just being bored and depressed, and I just wanted to change. So pretty much, I just got tired of it.
Well, and you got tired, you started seeking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So think about that word responsibility. So responsibility is we have the ability to respond to whatever's given us. Now, the other example of an event that you were responsible for. So let's say that you got married to this person named Dietmar, and you decided you wanted to get a divorce. All right, I'm kidding. So let's come over to this other couple though. Let's say that this lady marries this abuser, okay? And maybe she knew he was an abuser, maybe she didn't know he was an abuser, I don't know. But she marries an abuser. Now, she was responsible for choosing to marry the abuser. That was her choice to begin with. That still doesn't matter. She's still responsible for the R. So she's in misery, she's got to get out of this relationship. And so since she has 100% responsibility on the R, she can now respond to that abuse, get out of the relationship, and change her outcome. So now let's bring it to business, all right, in real estate. My lands, I'm depressed. I'm not having any seller lead sheets coming in. I haven't done a deal in a year. What's wrong with me? Change that mindset. Okay, the event is I don't have a deal. I don't have a deal. after a year. What's my outcome? I've spent $50,000 and I still don't have a deal. And I feel like depressed about this. Guess what? We're all 100% responsible for the R on the responding to this event. If I don't have a deal, and it's not a lack of knowledge of having over 100 ways to get a deal that we just went over one of the most recent masterminds. So we're still, we control the outcome by our responses every time.
I love it. I like this equation. You know, I've already told you I'm not handy at all in the house, but I love math and engineering. This is a pretty simple equation. What I love about this is the simple. The worse this event is, the more negative this number was, just on basic math, the stronger your response needs to be, right? So the worse you're feeling on this event, the stronger you need to come out. And normally, it's the opposite, right? Imagine it's a prize fight and we were boxers, and someone comes out and they're really laying haymakers on you. The natural tendency is to lay down, like this hurts. But if you want an outcome, which is a win, you need to throw bigger punches back, right? So your response, whether it's sweat equity, whether it's investment, whether it's training, whether it's education, whatever it is, if you don't like the event and you don't like the outcome, that event was very negative for you, the outcome's not working, your response needs to be intense. It needs to be stronger, right? If the event's not a big deal, you don't need a big response to get the outcome you want. But the bigger it is, right, and David used a good one with, losing your father, that's a big event, right? That is a very big event. His response needed to be over the top to get to the outcome. That's an event that lasted throughout his life. His response needed to be bigger, right, to go through some of it.
That's an excellent point, and I never thought about that from the math equation standpoint, but that's dead on.
It's just math, Jay. Just
Yeah,
basic
right.
math,
Rising to the occasion.
Yeah.
You got to meet it head on.
I love it. So you look at some of these are all excuses that I've used from time to time, right? I can't find time to exercise. I used to read more before I had kids. I don't know if you guys ever said something like that. You could put any word in there you want. Anything you wanted. I gave everything to you kids. Man, I've said this before to my parents. They complain when I'm not calling. And I said I used to have a longer commute. Now I got a short commute. I said that to my mom. She's like, "Really? You're complaining about a short commute? You can't find you got more time in your day." So I would say that. I don't know about social media. That's one right there that we're talking about. What are the right things? What are the right answers there when you think about those excuses? What should I be saying? What's the first one? What could I say?
I have time to exercise.
I have time. I can get up earlier. I can do it later in the night. I can find bullcrap. You're not prioritizing it, Ian. That's on you, right? What about the second one? Blaming not reading on kids.
That's true.
Just give up. You're not going to read anything when the kids crawling all over the house. For me, the answer was get up earlier, right? My kids aren't up at 5 in the morning, and if reading is important to me, and if I know I need to keep growing, then I need to get up a little earlier, or I need to get better at reading when I put them down, and not watching TV because I'm tired or something else. I need to find time to read when they're sleeping, right? Because they do sleep from time to time. Call my parents. That's simple, right? I don't know enough about social media. Right? That's bullcrap, right? I was using that as an excuse for myself earlier this year, and I thought, I'm not even trying, right? So I started a Twitter account, and I got an Instagram, and I tried to post things, and I'm clumsy as heck about it, but I learned a lot about it by going through some of it. My answer was I wasn't putting in the effort, right? And that was my answer that I went through on all of it. So let's talk about your obstacles. Let's talk about your obstacles. Jay, did you have to do a bit of an exercise on this yesterday, or?
They're on the board.
So
they're all up there. Now, Chaffee may have to help you interpret what that means as far as change the challenges. So they spent a couple of hours yesterday, an hour and a half, 2 hours on identifying challenges, and then they worked on solutions.
So let's talk about, pick any of them. Let's just go around the room one by one. You guys all go. We'll start here with Crystal. Pick any one of these, I wouldn't call them excuses, I know you're just putting obstacles, right?
Yeah.
Pick an obstacle and give me the internal limelight frame of mind if you were being critical of that obstacle. And we'll just, everyone go around the circle.
So, okay. So managing relationship expectations or family boundaries. So this came with a lot of us. So I have little people, and so just if looking inside me, like the things that I had created that were external were just, okay, I can't do it because they're doing these things. I can't set those boundaries. They don't understand. They feel like, so to look inside is more, I need to set up better indicators so that they know that those boundaries are there, and I need to make sure that when we do have, because we have so much time having stepped away from jobs, that's true of several of us that are even in the same group, so much more time for our kids, but trying to help reflect back with the kids that, that, okay, and they don't have the same understanding of time that we do, but I can't accept that, okay, well, I just spent 3 hours with you at the pool, and now I have to go do this. And they say I always work. I have to look back inside and say, okay, reflecting that in space, I have to just accept that they are kids, and that's the way you're going to see it. And I can only establish, so much time or so many boundaries. So that was like a huge thing for all of us. Is just really how do we do that with our relationships with our spouses, our relationships with other family members, and so.
I think a way to think about that, Crystal, is think of the hundreds of thousands of successful people that came before us who had lots of kids, right? And they were good parents, and they were successful in business, and they found, I always kind of think, is there someone else doing this? Is there someone else figuring it out, right? Whenever I start feeling bad for myself because I'm a parent and it's exhausting and they don't get it, I always come back to that of, there's been plenty of great dads that kicked butt in business and figured out how to balance both. I always come back to that to get my light flash back on myself of, there's got to be a way to do this. I got to figure out a different way of doing it. And sometimes I think it's expectations, right? And kids don't always listen to expectations, but the more you keep repeating it and explaining why you're doing what you're doing, it makes it a little easier.
Sure.
My kids would rather I be on the beach with them right now, but they kind of understand that, the money comes first. Just flip him his sister. I'll be like, I get it, Mom, I get it. Money comes first. What else? Someone else, come on, pick another one up here, one of the obstacles you're facing, and think about it from an internal limelight.
Do physical workspace.
Physical workspace,
Physical
okay.
workspace, that's something we're working on still. I love it. I'm going to start that.
Good.
So something bad is coming.
Yes.
FYI.
It's like when you leave with no
Yeah,
offense.
Exactly.
I might as well have thrown out a big but.
Yeah.
However, no. So she has a gorgeous U-shaped work desk with the cubicle and everything on it, and it's gorgeous. It's a huge desk, absolutely. I remember putting it together. And I thought, wow, she's going to have all the space in the world on this thing. Because when I first met her, she had a little L-shaped desk, and everything was piled over. What I learned is that she can fill up a flat space surface anywhere. So every flat space is going to be having something on it. So as I migrated more into the business, I automatically knew I was not going to have any workspace. I realized that. And I set my expectations as well. So externalizing everything was going to be, well, I don't have enough workspace here. I already gave myself an excuse. I'm not going to have enough workspace. Internalizing, I knew, and this is something recent, I needed to be more proactive with her and say, look, we have to clear this spot off here so I can have this section of this desk. So we're working on the workspace, and me no longer blaming her for everything. It's I'm letting her do it.
Yeah.
So
you're not communicating anything. You just got over the denial curve and assumed you would never have workspace, which is driving you nuts.
I have as much workspace as I have closet space.
That will always be the case. That's not an excuse.
You're not going to change that.
No.
Hey, Dan, is the kitchen table working out for you?
It actually is.
She has a desk space.
It actually is. I have kind of migrated over there. Now, here's the great thing about it. I'm working on the kitchen table, and the kids still go into her office. And I told her, I said, that's why God did duct tape. But she half joking on that. But yeah, there we go. So you have to work it out.
So you could let it consume you, right? That if I had more workspace, I'd be getting more done. Or you can just proactively approach it and say, this is hindering me. I need some space.
And that's what we do.
Don't need as much as you, need some space.
Absolutely.
That's good. Who else wants to take one?
Prioritizing. You get all this minutia thrown at us, and excellent education, and you leave the meeting all charged up, and you have to pick out the 1, 2, or 3 things that you really need to focus on. And it's real easy to say, well, you know, I need to be doing these 10 things, so I'm not going to be good at any of them. I'll just kind of.
That's the problem. You come back with a to-do list of 2 pages long, and you do nothing because it overwhelms you, and you don't know how to start. Right? It's like going after the internet and learning the internet instead of, you know what, 3 big ideas hit me, and I'm going to get great at these. I'm just going after these. The rest is great. I'm going to keep it in my head, but these 3 things I'm just going to do. Right? Because if not, you'll just keep saying I'm not good at prioritizing, or I have too many things to do. But you own that. That's on you. That's, no one's going to ever prioritize their lives. There's only one person that can prioritize for you, and that's you. Period. Not your spouse, not your friends, not your boss. You prioritize for you. That is it, right? You have to own that, and you have to come to grips with that. That's a big one for all of us. That's a big one for me. I battle with that all the time. What are my priorities? Where do I spend my time? But no one will fix that but me. And again, priorities. What I would say is, if there's areas of your business that you're not getting the outcome you want, I'm going to keep coming back to Jay's equation on this, because I like math. Right? So if you don't like your outcome, I'd go pick the priorities that are the biggest response to the events that are causing the bad outcome. Write that down, look at it, and think, what am I not spending enough time on with responses? What outcomes am I not happy with? And what responses, because there could be 30 responses coming out of this, right? 30 responses that you could change.
And
what
improve
response,
the event. Yeah.
What response is big enough to overcome the event, creating a negative outcome? That's how I would go prioritize right out of the gate. Because I would just look, what's my biggest response? How am I going to overwhelm the negative event that's giving me a negative outcome at this point?
I love what you just said.
Yeah, that's great.
How am I going to overwhelm the negative, what'd you say?
Negative event.
Yeah. How am I going? You got to overwhelm the negative event and turn it around quickly.
Yeah.
Overwhelm the negative.
Not 100 small R's.
Right.
I guess that's what I would say. Right? Not 100 small R's. 2 or 3 big R's. Right? That's what you need to ask yourself. And that's going to be different for everyone in this room. Right? You don't want to leave here trying to machine gun a bunch of little R's at your problems. Go get a couple of howitzers R's, right? Big ones that are going to overwhelm
Pirate R's.
that negative event. That's right. And I would ask you all to do that. You've got this list. Really look at all of these and think, okay, there's 3 or 4 of these that I'm feeling very much are my obstacles. What are my responses that will get over it, right? It's not going to be the same for all of you. You really have to think hard about internally, what are my R's going to be when I leave here to get a better outcome than I'm getting today? And that's not assuming anyone in here is getting a bad outcome. I just assume you all want better outcomes, or you wouldn't be in a group like this.
And given this conversation, Ian, Chaffee, you and I this afternoon, when we work as a group on, well, actually, y'all gonna be working on it between 12 and 2 while you're at lunch and right after lunch, your plans and goals for the next 90 days. We always do this, Ian, at every mastermind. On the second day in the afternoon, we get our goals for the next 90 days and how are we gonna achieve those. And we come back together the next 90 days, review those. But here's the framework in which I want us to do it today on your next 90 days. And this is going to make it easy for you. This is going to make it even easier for you on putting your 90-day goal plan together. And that is identify what outcomes, what are you experiencing in your business right now that's just like really bothering you. Okay? I mean, what really needs to be fixed, or what could be even better in your business? Like, I know you've had thoughts yesterday and today here at the meeting of, man, I got to get this fixed in my business. I got to get this better in my business. And that doesn't mean we still can't have our goals of how many deals are we going to do, okay? What's the revenue going to be? We always do that. But let's overwhelm some of these big negatives in our business and make some really big changes over the next 90 days. Because this conversation has really framed the thoughts I just had
Yeah.
for these next 90 days.
100%. 100%. I mean, I'll leave the limelight conversation with this line because I really believe this, that adversity and those negative events, very successful people with growth mindsets, they get energized by adversity, right? They get energized. If you've ever watched a really good salesperson, right? I consider myself a pretty good salesperson. That's how I made my name in business. I loved it when you said no to me. I loved it. It fired me up. I would grin and I would think, okay, it's on, right? It's not now is my time to do some work here, right? I would just in the back of my head I'd be thinking, I don't hear no, I hear maybe, right? That's what you think today. Let me get a chance at this. I would get fired up at no's, and I've watched this over and over. Fixed mindset individuals struggle in sales because they hear no and they panic and they shut down and they see it as a hit on their ego. And growth mindset folks just kill it in sales because they're like 4-year-olds. They just keep plowing ahead and figure out, I didn't ask it the right way, I didn't sell it the right way, I didn't position it the right way. So let adversity motivate you to figure out the right response. Anyone with young kids know this story? Jonathan, have you read that one in a while? It's Aesop.
It's been a long time,
Aesop's
yeah.
Fables. That's old school. It's
Yep.
before Dr. Seuss. So I recently read it. When I say recently, probably a year and a half ago. I read it and made me think of this conversation in general. So the story of the fox and the grapes. Fox comes along, looks up at a bunch of grapes in a tree, says, "Man, I really want those grapes. I love grapes. They look so perfect. They're delicious." And the fox scrambles up the tree and falls down. His claws aren't strong enough to get him all the way up the tree. Then he stacks a bunch of rocks together and tries to climb the rocks. The rocks fall over, he hurts himself. He tries jumping, he tries everything, and he gets frustrated. And then he starts justifying his mind that he doesn't like grapes. That's his last approach, right? He starts saying, they're probably sour. The last time I ate grapes, they were too ripe, and I didn't really like them anyway. I bet there's bugs in those grapes. You know what? Actually, I hate grapes. Why would I even? And
They're not the right color.
I don't even like grapes. Why am I doing this? Let me go find some grass to chew on because it's right here, right? And the whole point of this fable, and Aesop even says it, is any fool can despise at first what he can't achieve, right? Any fool can at first despise what he can't achieve, right? So I want something, I go after it, I hit a wall, I can't have it, I start to hate it, right? And this is a term, the technical term, I like fox and the grapes better because it's easier for everyone to grasp, but the technical term is cognitive dissonance. That's the psychology term of it. Do you remember that one, Crystal, from your psychology days? So what this is you alter your beliefs to reduce the discomfort of your reality. You alter your beliefs to change the discomfort of your reality, okay? And there are lots of famous quotes. Jay and I were talking about some of these famous quotes that are tied to cognitive dissonance that people say. Everything happens for a reason, right? You fail at something and you just kind of throw it up to providence, right? Everything happens, or it is what it is. That's another way that people say when they went after something, they didn't get it, and they just spit that out, right? Well, I guess it is what it is. As if their effort had nothing to do with the outcome, right? And when you start saying those kind of things, how about money is evil? Or money doesn't buy happiness? People saying that aren't people with money. Who with money has ever said money doesn't buy happiness?
It's the root of all these.
They don't say, they say all of that, but these are normally people that really wanted money, right? These are normally people that worked hard to get money, came up short, got frustrated, and they were the fox with the grapes. They hated it.
They just don't know where to shop.
They hated it. How about this one? This one's big in pop culture today. Chicks dig dad bods. Huh? How about that one? You guys heard of the dad bod?
Never heard.
Anyone heard of the dad bod? This is hot these days, right?
Yeah.
So all these girls, they think dad bods are really hot. Guys that don't have a decent body because they're a dad, right? I've said it a few times. It sounds pretty good. I don't have to work out. I can just kind of eat what I want and I got a dad bod. Bull crap. Chicks don't love dad bods. It's not true. It's something that's cognitive dissonance, right?
Need something for grandpa.
I look like this, and so I'm going to say the chicks like it when you have a dad body, right? Probably not true, but it's cognitive dissonance, right? That's what that is. And I'll use donuts as an example here because probably everyone in here can think about this. I probably went 10 years without eating a donut before my kids came along. Because there was never a donut in front of me. I never saw donuts. I didn't stop at Dunkin' Donuts on Sunday morning and bring them home for me and Jenny to eat a dozen donuts. I didn't do that. There were donuts around me. But once you have kids, all of a sudden donuts are around every corner. They're everywhere you go. There's donuts, and you forget how much you love donuts, right? I don't think anyone in this room is going to argue with me if I say that donuts are a horrible thing to put in your body. Would anyone say there's anything good about putting a donut into you? It is just sugar and carbohydrates, and it doesn't fill you, there's no fiber, it just makes you want to eat more donuts that make you feel worse about yourself, and I know all of these things.
I like the ones that had the bacon on top.
Because it's protein. You get protein out of that.
Yeah.
Still pretty terrible for you. And so, but what happens is, your willpower's not good. You look at it, it looks tasty. That donut's just sitting there, and you say no to it for a while, and over time, you start to eat the donut, right? You're like, why am I eating this donut? My belief system is I shouldn't eat donuts. I don't like donuts. Why am I doing this? Because they're sugary and they're sweet and they're delicious. And so what happens in your mind is you're going to do one of four things when this happens, right? When you go contradict a strong belief of yours, and this is a strong belief of mine. I think donuts are terrible garbage to put in your body, and I eat them all the time. So
You're supporting your local economy.
I'm internal limelighting for you guys right now. I eat them way too often. So you can do one of four things. Change the behavior. I'm done eating donuts, right? And literally stop eating donuts. This is the four things that can happen, right? I've got a belief, I'm eating the donut, I'm mad at myself because I'm contradicting it, so I can put it down and never eat the donut again. I figured that one out, but some people have done it. Some people have said, I'm done smoking cigarettes, and literally quit smoking cigarettes. Just, they change the behavior, right? And normally something strong needs to happen to get you to do something like that, right? Someone gets cancer, or one of your children starts smoking, you feel guilty about it, so you stop, right? Those kind of things happen to really change it. The second thing normally happens is you change your belief, right? So I start telling myself, well, it's a cheat day, right? I'm allowed to cheat every once in a while. It's actually pretty good every once in a while to give yourself something you want, right?
Rewards that cheat year.
Right? I need a little reward for having 6 good days, but then all of a sudden 3 days in a row I eat a donut. And I'm changing that belief. Well, 3 days of cheat days is pretty good. That's 4 days I did okay, right? So you start changing your beliefs. That's the second thing that you do. The third thing is you add a new belief. I'm going to start doing 30 more minutes at the gym. So now I've already given up on the fact that I shouldn't eat donuts. I've already just assumed I'm going to eat a donut every day now. And it's terrible for me, but I do 30 more minutes of cardio, right? And there's not enough cardio in the world to do if you keep doing this route. So I now have a belief, I don't eat donuts unless I'm doing an extra 30 minutes of cardio every day. So now I have two beliefs, right? Instead of just changing the belief of I eat donuts and not fighting myself, which is kind of one of the last things you could do, or you start to make lies to yourself, right? You start to ignore facts that conflict with the beliefs. So you start saying, well, this donut's not as high in calories. Actually, there's no custard in it, so it can't be that bad. Actually, I bet there's been some studies done that a donut every once in a while. You start lying to yourself about how your belief was in the first place, and that ultimately even leads to just a new belief, which is I like donuts and I eat donuts. Can you tell people that? I haven't got to that place yet. I still tell people I eat them. I just do number 2 and 3 a lot. I do 2 and 3 a lot. I can't get to number 1, right? So it's a silly example because we've all been tempted by something sweet or some kind of food where we try to have a belief in our head, but we break it when we go through it. But it also applies to business, right? So what I want you to do here is to take a couple of minutes. Don't spend a long time on this, literally 2 minutes. Write down an unfortunate reality you're facing right now, right? Don't use donut example, I already took that, but if you want to make it personal, it's good. Try to find something in business related, and tell me if you're dealing with 2, 3, or 4 in what's happening in your business. So maybe take one of these uncomfortable events that you're dealing with, something negative in your business, something you're trying to overcome, and try to think, am I doing 2, 3, or 4 in there? And if you are, what is it? So take a couple minutes and try to jot something down on that. Does that make sense, the assignment? Okay, who wants to share something? Who wants to share something you wrote down?
I need to change my behavior right now. Is I want to refinance my house, and I want to refinance my house, and now I change my belief. I don't want the house, and wait a minute. Number 3 is I don't want the house. And now I know I ignore the fact that I want the house and let it go into foreclosure. And I really wanted the house very badly all the time, and I still could get it.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of effort, and now I think maybe I don't even want the house anymore.
It's easier to change the belief than to go through the
Right.
effort to change
Yeah.
the event that you're
Yeah,
going through.
I didn't say it in the right
No, you
sequence.
did. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So I still have to change my belief. if
Write
I
that
want
down.
house.
Write that down as a big
Yeah,
R.
I
What else? That was a good one, Lisa.
I just want to say, I don't eat donuts, but I've obviously eaten a lot of other things.
You're a better man than I am.
One of the things I struggle with, and it really came under focus under there, I allow things to, I have a priority list, but I allow other things that come up or other people that bring things up to sometimes change my priority list. And I see that not so much that, I guess that does add a new belief is once that priority list changes, I allow something to change that, I'm adding a new belief. But I've really taken a look and I've been trying to work on the fact to be more of a slave to the calendar and the tasks that I have scheduled and the things that I want to accomplish that day, that week, and that month. But I do find that a problem, that I sometimes allow other things that come up to become a higher priority than what I believed just an hour ago.
Yeah. So your initial belief is my priorities are important, right? I set my priorities, but then the change happens to where you start maybe working on things that aren't on that initial list for other
Absolutely.
people, and then you add the new belief in of, well, other people's priorities are important too, or you start adding priorities and you're really just
I don't want to
caving.
blame it on other people. I end up making it the priority.
Yeah.
But they're priorities that I didn't need to change to at that time. Those priorities could have been later. It's not something that may not be important, but I just allow my schedule to change too easily.
So when you get into that, you start to get into time management and and the question you got to ask yourself is, why do I let these other priorities slip in? And it could be because they're easier tasks to come in, so I feel
Sometimes.
productive. I'm moving some stuff off my desk. I'm putting off the harder things, the deeper thoughts, the tougher conversations, the things that take harder thought, and doing easier things. Or they're tasks I like to do, right? So I'm kind of doing them because I like them, even though they're not the ones I really need to do. Because often, when you need a big R to get over a negative event, they're usually not things you like to do. If there were things you like to do, you probably would have done it already. We don't need to have meetings to talk about things you all enjoy doing, right? Normally you're talking about a big R, something that you're not naturally inclined to want to do anyway. So you start to really get into when your belief system of whose priorities are whose, right? It's the old, your email inbox is not your priorities, it's someone else's to-do list that you're making money for. Your priorities are your priorities, and you've got to really build that box around it and understand why you're changing that belief. That's a good one.
Mine related to prioritization also, and to ignore and change the belief. I just put down that, a person can be too structured. You need to be flexible. So, which side wins at that point? Do you stick with the top 3 things that you want to do and know you need to do, or do you change the whole belief concept and say, well, I'm being flexible, that's what I need?
The question is that I can't answer that. So you need to ask yourself, is my flexibility hurting my business? or is my structure hurting my business, right? Either one of those could be right, right? Someone who's too structured and not willing to change much could be hurting their business that way, and someone who doesn't have enough structure could be hurting their business that way. So only you know your business and only you can be honest with yourself. But if you say, I'm leaving here today, I'm going to be more structured. And as soon as you get a chance to break that and you flip back to, well, damn it, structure, that can hurt you too. You're just changing the belief you just agreed you were going to go try to focus on. So, even if you decide be more structured or be more flexible, give it a month or two, right? Give it some time to let that belief ride out and see if it makes any change to your business. But again, that comes back to if you're not happy with the outcome, probably says you should change. If you're happy with the outcome, I wouldn't say change anything. Good stuff. Think about these things, right? Think about where you might be doing something here, and obviously we're getting through a lot of concepts quickly, but give it some thought in the afternoon, give it some thought when you get back. Think about where am I getting around my core beliefs of what I need to be doing and spending my time on.
I got an example, right? This is relevant for today. Well, yesterday we leave the Dudes Club, and the last thing these people told me is, make sure you read the chapter. And in my mind, I know, okay, I gotta read the chapter before I show up tomorrow. So I start walking. I'm like, man, I feel good to be walking. Let's just keep going. We're at the beach. I'm at the beach. I'm gonna walk down the beach. And so I walk down the beach, and then start hearing this music. And I was like, oh, this music kind of sounds pretty good. It seems pretty like a good, good performer. So I walk over there and I sit and I listen to him for a while. And I was like, well, I know I need to go read this, but this music is pretty good, and so I leave. It's like 11 o'clock, and it's like, well, I'll just get up tomorrow early. Snooze. Yeah.
Slippery slope. Next thing you know,
I didn't get to read this.
I'm telling Ian you need to create a machine that would read. That's where it all ends up. Where the hell was that device to read this for me? You need the matrix where it just goes into the back of your head at the end of it. But that's how it works, right?
There's no hungry squirrels either in his life.
Yeah, one little belief cut leads to the next, to the next, to the next, and that's how it works. Confirmation bias. Who's ever heard of this? I promise this is our last big psychology term. Who's ever heard of this? Confirmation bias. Tia, what do you think it is?
It's where you just look for things that reaffirm your belief. Whatever it is you believe, you just look for the things that reaffirm it and ignore the things that don't.
Nailed it, right? So that's exactly what confirmation bias is you try to find sources of information that confirm what you already believe, or you try to actively avoid sources of information that would contradict how you believe, right? So did you get a copy of this beforehand? That's impressive. I had to Wikipedia this stuff before I got in. So, the best example I always give on this is right here. How many people know people that give 50% of their time to each of these channels? You're either Fox or that's like saying I root for the Packers and the Bears. That doesn't happen, right? You are Fox or you are CNN. Most people I meet, right? And my father-in-law, he's crazy about Fox, and you can't say anything that would contradict anything that's ever been said on Fox. And he doesn't want to hear it, and he'll stop the conversation, and he'll get up and leave even if you have facts that go against it, right? My aunts are all CNN. You can't contradict anything there. It's the same with these two papers, right? Most people either read one or the other, conservative or liberal, right? It's your politics. And you want to just keep hearing more of what you already believe. You don't want to hear the other side. It's actually a pretty big problem in this country right now. It's a pretty big problem that no one's listening to anyone else's side, and it's frictional and it's frustrating for all of us, but we all are taking part in it, right? We're all taking part in it. That's my obvious example. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna drive this down to a point on confirmation bias. So I grew up in Michigan, I played hockey, and I loved hockey. If you didn't play hockey growing up in Michigan, you were borderline weird. So everyone played hockey. And for me, up until I was about 12 years old, I made every hockey team. And I was making hockey teams because I loved playing hockey. And really when I looked at it, it was more I just loved all my friends who were on the hockey team. And we traveled together. We were in Canada all the time in vans, driving around.
And I loved it. I played it all the time. And even in the summer, you played street hockey in Michigan. You just played hockey all the time. But I never really practiced deliberately, right? I just played hockey all the time. And I tried out for a travel team, the travel team that I had made 2 years in a row with the same friends, and I got cut. It was the first time I'd ever been cut on a hockey team, and I was just crushed. I mean, it was devastating. It was, and to me, I was most sad because I was picturing all my friends going on all those trips, and I wasn't going on any of them anymore, right? Now I was gonna have to be on a house hockey team, and those weren't the same friends. I hadn't played with them, right? And so all of those trips were just evaporating, right? It was like I lost all my friends. It was hurtful. It sucked, right? And I was angry at the coaches. This is bogus. This is a bad decision. And I got into the car with my dad, and the whole way home from the tryout, I'm telling him why I've been unfairly wronged, right? The whole way home, right? There is not one defenseman out there that hits as hard as me. Not one. Like, Chody, he couldn't push someone out of the front of the net if his life depended on it. And I was thinking of my strengths, right? Talking about my strengths. I was more of a physical player. I was a little bigger than the other kids, defensemen. And my dad did the biggest favor he could have ever done for me at that moment. He could have said, son, I'm sorry, you're right. No, you are pretty good. He said, how good are you at skating backwards? And in a time I didn't know where this was coming from. I thought he was going to support me. And I'm like, I'm all right. He's like, you all right at skating backwards? Are you better than any of the kids that made the defense on that team skating backwards? Are you faster than anyone? When you did the circle drill, did you beat any of them skating backwards? No. How often does a defenseman skate backwards, Ian? I don't know, like 60% of the time, maybe, more than half the time. So half the time you're the slowest guy on the ice. Shut up, Dad. I'm getting mad at him. He said, tell me about your slap shot. How good's your slap shot? Well, I think I had the best wrist shot out there. I didn't ask you about your wrist shot. How's your slap shot? Did you have a better slap shot than any of the four that made it ahead of you? Well, I mean, probably not. Probably not. What's a defenseman normally shoot when he gets the puck? Slap shot? Do you do a wrist shot, or is that what a forward normally does? No, it's a slap shot. And he just systematically broke my game down to tell me why I didn't make the team, and he was right. And I couldn't hear it for like a month, right? He told me it, and that he's wrong, I've been wronged, I'm upset, I'm emotional, and the more I thought about it, he did me the biggest favor in the world that he did not confirm my bias. He did not give me an out. He did not let me be weak. He did not let me focus on my strengths and not the real reason I didn't make that team. He was what I needed at that moment. He was a coach, right? He was critical of me because I wouldn't have grown if not. If not, I'd have just quit hockey forever because life's unfair and it's all politics and it's not right. But instead, about 4 weeks later, I started skating backwards to school. True story. I would skate backwards in my rollerblades to school, and he would drive slowly behind me and watch me skate. This is the 80s. Parents were cool with you skating backwards into traffic on the street. Great dad, though. Great dad, I gotta tell you. But I would skate backwards. I would hustle my butt to school, a mile away. I would skate backwards on the way to school when it wasn't icy, and I pounded about 100,000 pucks into that garage that off season until I had the best slap shot when I went out for the next tryout, and I was at least in the middle skating backwards. I never really got to being the best. I made the team the next year because I had a really good coach who wasn't about to let me feel sorry for myself. So as soon as I started looking for confirmation bias, he called timeout, called me on it, and told me why I didn't make that team. And it's stuck with me my whole life that as a manager I've always been that way. That if I hear you getting in your own way and trying to confirm bias, I'm going to let you see the other side of things. I'm going to let you see why you didn't get that promotion. I'm going to let you see why you're not making as much money as some of the other people. I'm going to tell you what your weaknesses are, and you might not be ready to hear it, but I know it's going to help you. And my dad helped me with that, right? And so I tell that story because it's important that we in business have someone that will call us out when we're looking for confirmation bias on why things aren't working the way they should.
And now you know why we have Chaffee at the mastermind.
It's true. You need someone to go through it. Dan, you were about to.
Well, it was just going to be a question for you.
Yeah.
So you spent all this extra time identifying, your dad identified the weaknesses. You acknowledged those. You took ownership of them. You worked really hard to overcome those weaknesses. However, during your story, you also mentioned that most of your strengths are what a forward does. Why don't you just go for the forward position?
For me, I love defense, and I would say that I had strengths that were forward. I wasn't as good as the forwards at what they did either. I wasn't particularly fast going forward either. I was a little bit of a giant. If I want to be honest, I was better at kind of pushing people around, and that's what a defenseman does. So I probably wasn't fast enough to make it as a forward either. So I'm standing here in front of you because I didn't make the NHL. I wasn't that good at it. So but that piece of it, what I would ask you all to think about on this question. This is probably one that you do for the afternoon session. Is I would ask you, who do you rely on to challenge your beliefs? When you're getting stuck in your own way on confirmation bias, who is your Barry Mathews, right? My dad. Who is your person who calls you out on why you're really stuck? Who is that? Who is that who calls you out when you're not making it? You need that person. It could be a spouse. It could be a business partner. It could be a coach. It could be any one of those things. But I've found in my career, the people that helped me the most were not the ones that said, good job. That I don't need that. That doesn't help me get better to say I'm great. In fact, that can make things worse. That can swing me into the fixed mindset too much. The best coaches I had were just never satisfied with what I was doing, what I was producing. They always saw something more in me. And they drove me nuts at the time, right? Whether they were managers or they were coaches or teachers, they drive you nuts at the time because you're thinking to yourself, nothing's ever good enough for this person, right? But the truth is, they're making you better. And if you really look at it from that way, they see more in you than you're seeing in yourself.
You just caused me to have a flashback to one of my best managers I ever had in pharmaceutical sales. Was my first manager, and that was his first question when you got back in the car. So what could you have done in there to have made it a better outcome?
Yeah.
Done different.
Yeah.
That was his first. He never focused on maybe what you did wrong, what you could have improved on. He let you tell him how you could have better handled that call.
That's a great manager in a nutshell, right? Always looking, and I'll go back to the fixed versus growth mindset, right? The fixed mindset person don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They don't want that criticism. They don't want, but that was your best growth. That was a favor he was doing you to show you where you could have done a little better. It's okay to give a little bit of, here's a few things I saw you do well.
Right.
Let's talk about where you go. You can't always be totally negative,
right.
But you need a critical coach. You don't need a coach saying rah rah all the time. Don't bother with coaches like that. Find one who will see in you that you could do better in something else. That's how, in my mind, it's hard to get over your own confirmation bias. You need help in this area. At least I have always personally needed help to get over my own confirmation bias. And these are the last two slides we'll get into. So I want to talk about visualization versus public commitment. So Jay was saying he'd like to lose 20 pounds. Hell, I'd like to lose 20 pounds. Everyone likes to lose 20 pounds. So if let's vote. I'm going to give you an A or a B choice, but if I wanted to lose 20 pounds in the next 90 days, right, and we're starting right here, right, so this is a visualization versus public commitment. Raise your hand. I'm going to ask you both of these. Let's say I did this. Every morning for 90 days, I visualized, I journaled about how I felt in my clothes, how I wanted to feel in 90 days, what I would look like, what my happiness would be when I'm 20 pounds lighter, right? So daily visualization exercises every morning, really giving it 20 minutes, writing about it, thinking about it. Or I commit to everyone in this room that I will lose 20 pounds and I come to your next mastermind and get on a scale in front of you. So that's the second choice, right? One or the two. Raise your hand. Which one do you think would be more effective, A or B? It's not a trick question. I'm just curious as to what you think. So raise your hand if you think A would be most effective. Okay, couple. And B. Most think B. Okay. So my answer would be do both. My answer would be do both. I don't know about you all, but visualization for me, I struggle to do visualization exercises when I'm not committed myself to someone that other people know about, right? If I committed in my mind, I'd like to lose 20 pounds by the next mastermind, and I'm going to do some visualizations, I'll probably blow it off most of the time. I'm just being honest with everyone in the room. I'll find other things to do. But if I told you all I was gonna do it, and I just stood up on a scale here and you all saw the number like Biggest Loser, and I said I'll be here in 90 days, I'll be on that scale again, it would make me do this every day. And actually my visualization, I would be visualizing standing on a scale in front of everyone, right? That would drive me. It wouldn't be so much how I feel in my clothes, it would be how I would look on the scale when you guys were all looking at the number and ready to giggle at me, right? And so you have to be careful with visualization if you're only doing visualization, right? If all I ever do is visualize shooting free throws, that's all I ever do. I'm not going to be better at free throws than if I visualize and I practice and I actually shoot, right? You can't just visualize things. You have to put yourself out there. You gotta put yourself out there and make commitments that are a little bit scary, right? Don't give people goals you know you can hit. Give people goals that kind of make you a little nervous that you might fail. That's the kind of goal you want to give people when you make a public commitment. Because 20 pounds would be really hard for me to lose in 90 days. That would be really hard for me to lose. So making that kind of a commitment to you would take all the visualization, all the effort, everything I would do. If I told you I'd lose 5 pounds, you know what I would do? What would I do? A week before, I'd be on a treadmill twice a day. I would not eat donuts that last week, and I wouldn't drink water for 3 days before I got here. I'd lose 5 pounds, and I'd be like, check it out. 20 pounds, I couldn't do that. That wouldn't work for 20 pounds, right? 20 pounds, I would need to be working every day for 90 days. So that is the kind of goal that you want to set that really changes your behaviors. A public commitment of a goal that changes your behaviors. They're incredibly important.
With the time frame.
With a time frame, right? That's so incredibly important that I'm committing to a date, I'm committing to a number, I'm committing to when I'm going to do it is going to force me to visualize and think. And so, you know, I would ask you to answer that question yourself, right? How many people really know about your real goals? Not the goal underneath the bar of what you really want, that's easy for you to hit so you don't have to admit to failure, but do they really know a big goal that you have that's difficult to go make happen, right? Do they know that? And you know, when people ask you about it, what do you say? What do you say, right? This goes back to I'm retired, right? I was saying something that just was impossible for me to fail at, right? Who fails at being retired? Me, I guess. I got out of it. I'm up here working. I failed at retirement. I sucked at it. Feeding those damn squirrels. So this is your assignment for the afternoon. Jay's going to lead this, but this is your assignment. You're going to have an accountability partner that you go through, and I want you to think about all the concepts that we talked about today. But I want you to put some short-term goals and some long-term goals, and those goals need to make you a little uncomfortable. And if you're the accountability partner, I want you to press them a little bit. And if those are really challenging goals, I want you to think about, you know, where have you been avoiding failure? And how can you, and really what we're talking about is risk, right? The risk of our self-esteem getting hit. Where could we take a little bit more risk? Are you self-handicapping in a way? Where could it surface along the path to your goal? You know, how could cognitive dissonance, how could confirmation bias play a role? How are you going to guard against it? What are you going to do to guard against it? Really think about it. Go through this drill, which is going to take a little bit of time and back and forth. And then discuss how you're going to plan to visualize and keep those goals top of mind, right? It might not be getting up in a scale, but it might be committing to everyone in the room some pretty big goals, then getting back here and seeing whether you did it or not. Use those big R's that we talked about. These should all be, everything you're talking about in these goals should be the big R's. Event plus response equals outcome. Think about your outcomes and think about the big R's that you would need to go ahead and do that. Crystal, you don't need to write it all down. We promise we'll get all this to you.
I already got it all written down.
Look at you. Wow. Overachiever. Greg, too, you already got it done too, right? You typed it already?
We just take a picture.
Yeah.
But you're going to email us this whole presentation.
You'll get this whole deck, yeah. There's no copyright terms on any of this stuff. So.
Did you get it all, Crystal?
I did.
Oh, awesome. That's some fast typing, girl.
In general, we got just a couple minutes left, but on any of the topics, were there any open questions that you had? Anything in general that we didn't discuss today that I hit 11:30 like I promised, Jay? So
you're right on target, man.
So what's the secret to finding a profitable triple net lease?
Hundreds of phone calls. Honestly, it was a lot of cold calling at first because no one knows who you are when you're making these phone calls. And I started with banks. So I come from a finance background, so I called as many regional and local banks as I could find and asked for their distress, how much distressed debt they had. And unfortunately found that not many have distressed debt anymore, which scares me about the economy. But the more I called, the more they would call me and give me ideas. And one had just given a loan to a founder of a collision center. He was working with Gerber, who's a publicly traded collision center, to sell his business. And they wanted him to put $1 million of upgrades into the building. So he had to borrow money, and then he was going to flip it. So I got in touch with that guy and asked him when he was planning to sell and if he wanted to cut the realtor out and work with someone direct. Lots of calls, lots of people saying no, lots of crappy days coming home thinking this is never going to work. So probably the same you all do, just grinding, making more phone calls than the next guy. And then once you do a deal, they start to build from there. Then other people find out you did a deal. So it's a little easier today in that people are sending them to me. The first one was interesting.
A challenge.
Challenge, yeah, absolutely a challenge. My response needed to get bigger because my outcome sucked. I was retired. I needed more phone calls. That was my response, more phone calls.
And
build bigger lists, call more people.
And Ian, you got one more slide, don't you? Or did you change it up to this one as your last?
Just the last one, don't be a victim, be a victor. That's my LinkedIn. So if you all want to link in with me, you guys are all in my network now. I've got to know you all a little bit. And I write on Quora also. I don't know if you guys know what Quora is, but it's a pretty neat website where people ask me questions, and I write a little bit. So if you want to follow me on Quora, that's probably my only social media presence at this point. I'm not Jay. I don't have a sizzle reel yet. I might at some point, so I have to use Quora. But I hope you all stay in touch with me because you've been an awesome group, a lot of fun to talk to.
Well, let me tell y'all before we thank Ian for being here this morning. Ian shared with me. It was this week you shared with me. You just started writing and posting articles on Quora, right? That's
Quora.
Quora. And you like search for any kind of topic, right?
Yeah.
And you started that 90 days ago, and within 90 days, what's happened?
I have 1,700,000 views so far on the.
1,700,000 views of his articles in 90 days. That's pretty
fun.
cool.
It's neat.
Yeah, so that's growing fast. Y'all, let's give a great big hand for Ian Mathews. Appreciate it. Y'all, I tell you, wow, it shouldn't surprise me, but an engaging group, yes?
Great group. It's a fantastic group. Yeah. A lot of fun to hang out with.